I'd like to call this meeting to order for the school committee for, and I can't remember the date, September 13th. And I would like everybody to please join me in standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Riley.
Thank you, Riley.
Go on.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, you're fighting.
You guys, see you guys buck up.
Okay, so I know we usually have public forum comment first, but today we have special guests, so we're going to ask them to go first, and then we'll have public comment on. So these folks, I was on, I think.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. These folks are from Best Buddies, so we'd like them to give a little information. We're going to try to do something like this at all of our meetings, so we know what's going on at all the schools, because we have talked about this before happening, so this was our first one to start, where school just begun. I thought this would be a nice one to start.
So I can just jump in. These folks are famous or infamous. If you all watched the Zip Trip on Fox 25, we had Best Buddies is highlighted on our Zip Trip to Whitman, and they represented our school and our district outstandingly. So the only bad picture we got was I was in the back. Everything else looked great. So if you guys could take it away with your presentation, that'd be great.
You can go right up
To the podium so we can hear you.
Hello, we are the Whitman-Hanson Best Buddies. Thank you for having us. We're really excited to be here. My name is Brooke and I'm a senior.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jordan. I'm a senior at this school.
Hi, I'm Ainsley. I'm the co-president of Best Buddies, and we have another co-president, Savannah, who would have been really excited to be here, but she couldn't make it tonight.
Hi, I'm Riley. I'm in the post-grad program. I'm also co-president of Best Buddies.
And we are excited to present to you the 5 W's and 1 H of Best Buddies.
Who? Whitman-Hanson Best Buddies is led by students.
What? It is fun, inclusive group of friends hanging out.
Where? Best Buddies goes where the fun is. Sometimes it is right here in the school. Sometimes it goes as far as the Boston Garden.
When? We meet monthly, but there are a lot of other activities in between that we can give you the opportunity to participate in.
How? By staying true to yourself, be kind and inclusive.
Why? It helps you communicate, connect with other people. You make so many lifelong friends.
Thank you guys so much for having us. Does anybody have any questions?
What do you do at Boston Garden?
We watched the Celtics game.
Oh, awesome.
I like the way you didn't call it TD Garden. That's old school.
The garden.
Maybe you guys know, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask, how do students join?
Students can join by coming to our informational meeting, and then they can join the Google Classroom. And we're pretty open. People can join later on in the year, but you just stay after school, get a Google Classroom code, and you start coming to the events.
Thank you.
Have you all been in Best Buddies previously, like last year and whatnot? Could you give us like a recap maybe of some of the events you guys participated in last year?
Last year we did bowling. We went to the Celtics game, like we said. We also did some after-school craft events. We watched movies after school. We do a lot of stuff in the school some days, but then we would also do field trips. We went to Jordan's Furniture during a school day, which was really, really fun for the Enchanted Village during Christmas time.
Awesome.
Okay. And
We
could
also
you,
did field day with the whole district, which included the elementary school kids, and that was a super fun day.
and could you talk about your sports program that you have that's kind of new for the school? So we'd like to hear about that.
So last year, our former president really helped get the ball rolling with Unified Track. And so we had practice twice a week. We went to sectionals and states, and it was one of the best experiences of my entire life. Like seeing everybody come together to play in a sport like that, it would literally make me emotional every single time.
And Unified is a combination?
Yes, so Unified is a combination of both kids in the post-grad program and in the different rooms at our school, and also kids who are just in Best Buddies. So it's a combination of peer buddies and then their buddies.
Very good.
We also had a Unified basketball game, which was another sport opportunity, but we didn't do a season with that. We just did one game.
Do you have a ballpark on your numbers, like participation, like?
So for Unified Track, we had around like 30 kids that were on the team. And then for basketball, we probably had like 2 teams of like 15 or 17 kids.
Awesome. And how about the whole group like that? Is that
Yeah, we have like over 60 members.
awesome? Awesome.
That's really good.
This is awesome. I love this. Do you guys fundraise? You do fundraisers?
Riley does.
Rocket Riley, man. There you go.
He's the money guy?
He's the money guy.
Yes, we do fundraise.
Okay.
I actually have my own fundraiser that I do for this Best Buddies, which I made myself with my dad.
That's awesome.
Called Rocket Riley Redemption Project. I redeem bottles and cans that we get from people, and we redeem them, and the money goes to the Best Buddies here.
Can I give you my cans? Yeah, that's how it works? All right, yeah, no, I save them, I recycle. All right.
Yes, our first event will be at High Hollow.
Heidi's right down the street from me.
Yes, and that's where I'm doing a can drive.
When is that?
The 30th. December
September?
30th.
I'll be there.
Awesome.
One more thing, you guys have a Facebook page? Or somewhere I can spread the word?
We do Instagram a lot. We have an Instagram page called WH Best Buddies 23.
Okay.
And then we have some stuff that's posted on the Twitter occasionally, but it's not our Twitter.
Mainly
it's just
Instagram?
Mainly Instagram,
Okay.
yep.
Do you guys want to introduce the other 2 folks that are standing in the corner that want to be hidden?
These are our wonderful co-advisors, Miss Buzan and Mr. O'Neill.
Oh, that's Jackson's teacher.
Thank you all.
Kathy, when did we start this? What year did we begin?
I was trying to remember that, Mr. Simon. I believe we are in our 10th year.
Right.
I believe. And this all started because a student who was a senior at the time went to Mr. Simonak and said, "Can we have a Best Buddies in our school?" And then, of course, Mr. Simonak made it happen. And it is. We have our first information meeting tomorrow, and we are expecting standing room only. I've already heard of so many students that are coming to sign up.
Mr. O'Neill, you need to get Jackson there.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask these folks to get me a calendar of events, especially when they're local here. The Unified basketball game, I think, was one of the most amazing experiences I've had in education, to see a school come around, a bunch of student athletes, and play and have a great time. Win or lose, nobody lost that day. It was great. Unified track is pretty awesome, and then just watching your events that take place are pretty... It's cool to say we're an inclusive school. We are toying with unified sports at the middle, trying to get that started. There's about 4 or 5 middle schools that do unified basketball in our area, and I'm trying to talk to the 2 principals to get our kids together so we can compete on that level as well.
And we're also going to increase our unified basketball games. Mr. Simon gave us permission to do what we did last year. It was an early dismissal day, and the last period teachers and students had the choice of coming. And speaking of fundraising, it was $1 a person if you wanted to come to the game. And we even had teachers that paid their whole class to come. And the gym was amazing. The energy, Jordan, you were one of our MVP of the game. Do you remember what we're talking about, the basketball game? Do you want to talk at all about like how how did that feel when, like, with the crowd cheering you on? Is that something you want to keep doing?
I'll say I made so many baskets. I'm like, how many potatoes? What shade of brown?
Right? So we're going to keep doing that on early dismissal date. And we were thinking, I believe it was Mr. Sumner had the idea of doing it on a grading day because really, like that last period is a half a day, and that would be a great, like, kind of transition into the next semester. After school that day, I had my unified basketball t-shirt on, and I was walking down the hall, and a student who I do not know stopped me and said, "Were you a part of that basketball game today?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "That was the best thing I had ever been to." And now he wasn't in Best Buddies, he wasn't, but it was just like, it was what we all did not touch the ground. We did not touch the ground. The whole school, it was just such an incredible community. We had so much fun. So we're definitely going to keep doing that. And we need to keep showing off your maps.
Beth, can I just... Sure. This is great. Really, pretty awesome. I always talk about Mrs. McEwen coming up here and how great that is. It's like one of my favorite presentations every year. You guys, you're right there with her. I mean, you're doing some pretty inspirational work, and I applaud you all. It's really awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being our first presenters of the year, too. Thank you.
Thank you. If you sell candy, don't forget, come before a school committee.
Right. Thank you, folks.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it so much.
And it makes things happen real quick. I've been part of this program feel like my whole life. I want to say how much I love Best Buddies.
Oh, that's nice. Good, Riley.
Go walk it right.
That's right. Look for them in the paper.
Good job,
See you, Riley.
Best Buddies, even better. Really love to have you here. Right back at you.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you very much.
Have a great night. Beat the rain.
Okay, so next on the agenda is public comment. Do I have some people who wish to speak tonight? Come on up. Just make sure you give your name and your address, please.
I'm supposed to follow that. I'm Leila Donovan, 81 Old Mansion Lane. Quickly, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys live, eat, and breathe the middle school project, but for the folks at home, there's 2 points that I would like to make, that as we debate this huge topic, it's important to remember that in order to just renovate the building and get it up to code, that's got approximately $60 million price tag on it, and that would be 100% on the residents of Whitman. There's no funding available from the state. That's a hefty sum of money for fixes that will need to be done again and again and again. If we do want to take advantage of the funding that's available to build a new school building, that price tag is between 73 and 89 million at this point, right? That's a staggering number, for sure. I get it. But that price is not going to go down. My fear is that if we don't move forward with this, we're going to end up with the same price tag for a lesser school at some point down the road. I know that number is staggering, and I think another important point that I want folks at home to remember is that upwards of $10 million of that, right, is contingency. So it might not be needed, and if it's not needed, then we are not taxed on that, correct? So I wanted the people at home to know that. I know you guys say it all the time, but I thought maybe hearing some other people say it might be helpful. And I feel like we have an opportunity to do what's right for our youngest residents in this town. And I ask you to please allow the residents of Whitman to speak at the polls and vote on that.
Thank you. Someone else?
Can I just make one clarification real quick? It's
Yeah,
very
go ahead.
pertinent. And
Go ahead.
I just want to clarify, it's, the 60 million is not a renovation, it's a repair. So I don't want people to think that there's going to be renovations, et cetera, et cetera. That's only to repair what's broken and to bring things to code.
Thank you, Fred.
Elizabeth Dagnall. I live at 316 School Street. I've spent a fair amount of time at the middle school building committee meetings and informing myself about the facts and figures of this project, but that's not what I want to talk about tonight. Tonight I want to talk about fear. There seems to be a lot of fear surrounding this project, fear that it's too large in scope, fear that it won't be voted through, and fear as the main motivation in any situation can be a very damaging thing. I'm the mother of a 13-year-old boy, so if I allowed myself, I could be scared all of the time. I could use up all my time and energy running through possible negative scenarios and what-ifs on his behalf. There have been times I've allowed myself to take that approach, constantly asking myself, will he be okay? Will we be okay? And I can tell you that worrying amounts to nothing other than a state of worry. What I'm learning as a parent of a teen is that trust is far better than fear. Trust. When I allow for trust, the answer to "are we going to be okay?" surprises me. It often turns out to be something like this. We are going to be more than okay. We are going to be great. Rather than fear that this project won't pass at the ballot box, what if we trusted that it can? And what if, after passing this project, the people of Whitman are more than just okay? What if we are great? Investing in a state-of-the-art, forward-facing educational facility might feel hard and it might feel scary, but fear keeps you small. The result of passing this project will be future students who are better academically prepared, more well-rounded, and finally on par with the students in surrounding districts, and homeowners with markedly increased property values. And I think we can all agree that that's going to be better than okay. It's going to be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Julia Sheehan, 38 Beale Ave. I want to say thank you to this committee and the middle school building committee and everyone who's worked so hard on this project so far. I know there's a lot of concern about the increased cost and whether or not the town will vote to approve it as is. At this point, the truth is that there is no way to drastically change the scope of the project without significant delays and even risking our grant from the MSBA. Given that, I hope that this committee will move forward with the October 30th town meeting and the November 4th vote. I believe that people of Whitman should have the opportunity to get out and vote. If we delay, my fear is that we will be faced with the near certainty of increased building costs, and we may well get to the point of spending equivalent money for a lesser building with fewer educational opportunities for our students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Julia Nanigan, 28 Forest. I just had somebody point out to me yesterday, so born and raised here, and I went to the Holt School for elementary, which is no longer here, and I also went to the middle school, which is still here, and I went to Whitman-Hanson, but not this one, the other one. So of all the schools that I went to here, the middle school is the only one that's still here and exactly the same. And it's pretty awful. We have to do this. And kicking the can down the road, we know it's going to end up costing more money. So I think we just need to do it. And yeah, trust in everyone to make the right decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more public comment? Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the approval of meeting minutes. The first is July 19th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any changes, questions? Okay, all in favor? Okay, unanimous. Okay, the meeting minutes for August 23rd.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and yes,
I have a motion to amend one sentence in the
Okay.
meeting minutes.
go ahead.
It would be on page 5 of the August 23rd minutes, the last page, the last paragraph. Remove the sentence that says, Ms. Byers apologized to the committee and to the public for the complaint brought against her. I am asking to amend this and replace that sentence with, Ms. Byers stated she was sorry this campaign against her, which has the appearance of harassment, has taken up the taxpayers' and committee's time. My motion is to amend.
Okay, do I have a second for her motion? For the amendment?
Second.
Okay, Steve? Okay, so we're voting on the amendment first?
Is this discussion? Discussion on that?
Yeah.
I would say I'd be more comfortable with passing on this and looking at it next week. I just haven't had a chance to confirm that's what actually transpired, so I'd be guessing.
You'd like to table it?
Yeah, I think that's, if it's, so I mean, I have no problem with amending it if that's accurate, but I just don't recall.
Okay. All right, so how would you feel about that? This is your amendment.
Well, I am making the amendment because I know the words that I spoke. If it's more comfortable for members, I can withdraw the amendment if there's a motion to table the minutes till next week. If people want to watch the recording to verify my words, that's all. Because the way the minutes are written right now, the intent is expressed differently than what my intent was with the words I spoke.
All right, so are you making a motion to table?
Sure, yeah, I'll make the motion.
Second.
Do we have a second to table? Okay, all in favor of tabling till the next meeting, please raise your hand. Okay, unanimous. Okay.
I'll do the student advisory.
Okay, you're going to
So,
do it.
student advisory report, I know Mr. Forth isn't here, but I worked with David to hook him up with Dan Moriarty and Teresa Scott, the advisors of our student council, and there is an election process in place right now for a new student advisory committee. I believe that election is taking place this week, maybe Thursday, tomorrow or Friday. So at our next meeting, we should have a full student advisory. The reason we pushed it off a little bit is to allow freshmen to get on the ballot. Desi had recommended a June. We went back and forth with this committee, if you remember, to allow freshmen to actually participate, and the freshman elections we haven't had a freshman election yet. So for our October meeting, we will have a student advisory committee. They will come bi-monthly or every other month, except for the chair, who will report out every month or every meeting that we have, if they so choose. Any questions at all? Okay. Beth, do you mind if I move some things out of order on the superintendent's report? Sure. Okay. I'm going to start with what I think is really good stuff. Last Friday, I met with Beth Menton. If you remember Beth, she is the niece of the Pierces, and we are dedicating a path at Conley School called Pierce Path. So George and I went out and met with Karen. I've never seen the path. We saw it. Our operations and facilities department is going to clean it up. And I spoke to Beth at length last week about the dedication. And she kind of put together some words, and she wants us to wordsmith it a little bit, but basically it's Pierce Path. John and Agnes Pierce dedicated their lives to the children of Whitman. John is head custodian of Conley for 17 years. Agnes Pierce in the Whitman school, for 36 years in the Whitman school system. Gurney School to the principal of Conley School. So we'll wordsmith that up. I told her we'd take care of a plaque And she told me that John was a veteran. So I thought it would be good for us to dedicate the week of Veterans Day. And she's available on November 6th. Time to be determined, but I'm guessing around 1 o'clock, so the students from Conley can come out and be there after lunch before the snow hits. So we'll do it in November, on November 6th. Tentatively, I'll submit something to the committee and invite you to that dedication. We're also looking at putting a rock over there with the plaque attached to that, and we'll put together a nice little ceremony for Beth. Her mother is ill, and I asked if she was going to need any accommodations. Hopefully she'll be able to attend, but we're not sure. So Beth, I guess, was sisters, was a sibling to Agnes. So it was a good meeting.
I'm sorry. So Beth's dad was brother with John.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. So again, good meeting with her. Wanted the committee to know right away so you can put it on your calendars. And it is a Monday. It's a normal work day for folks, but we're going to try to get that done again Veterans Day week and before the snow hits. So.
And if there's snow that day?
Yeah, if there's snow that day.
You're going to give us the lottery numbers
we're
for
in a
the
lot of
night,
trouble.
for that night, right?
But I wasn't predicting a hurricane this week either. So, we're there. I'm going to move right to district opening, if you don't mind. So for the folks at home, members of the school committee toured. We started in 2018 doing a tour the week before school opened. So school committee members met with me, the director of facilities, and we toured all our schools to make sure they were in good shape for opening, which was on the 30th of September. Teachers reported at 9 o'clock to the John McEwen Performing Arts Center on the 28th for opening remarks from me and WHEA President Kevin Kafka. Chris, you alluded to Mrs. McEwen. Mrs. McEwen presented the Do Its Best for Kids Award to Mrs. Bozan in front of a packed house of faculty and a standing ovation. A well-deserved award. New faculty members were introduced and returning faculty members were recognized for years of service. Our keynote speaker was George Koros, who delivered a very inspiring message to our staff members. Per our tradition, the operations department grilled burgers and dogs, and our food services department provided sides and cookies. And I think some will say the ice cream truck out front was the highlight of their day. I thought it was my speech opening it up, but I'll defer. Students came back to the buildings on the 31st. I really want to say thank you to our partnership with Hanson Fire, Hanson Police, Whitman Police, and Whitman Fire. They join us every opening day to welcome our kids with high fives and smiles, and it's a great experience for our students coming in. The positivity from our emergency service workers and is outstanding, and I can't thank them enough. And we welcomed our students back. As the school committee well knows, there are some blips in the road with our busing and our new regulations around, or our new guidelines around buses. We've looked at each and every concern. The safety committee met on the 1st of September, and I'll tell the committee and publicly, the safety team committee meets annually. This isn't a new deal because we changed our regs. When parents may have concerns around transportation, we gather the safety committee. The safety committee this year, it always includes public safety, but this year it included the superintendent, assistant superintendent, our building level principals, the chair of the school committee, and our two SROs, Kevin Harrington, which I want to say congratulations, Kevin. He was promoted to sergeant last night for the Whitman Police Department, and Officer Derek Harrington, as well as our transportation director, her assistant, and two members from First Student. We reviewed every complaint or issue. We changed or modified some, and we didn't modify others. That being said, and I'll be forward, I've ventured out and Karen followed the buses around to make sure the stops were safe. I ventured out and took some videos of some of the major concerns, and I will be bringing a couple concerns back to the safety team if we can look at that by Friday to make some modifications based upon what I observed and getting their feedback. I do want to say when the safety team meets, I have two public safety officers who travel the roads, and we take it from an educational perspective, from a bus perspective. They look at it from a safe perspective, and when they make recommendations or say that those stops are safe, I have to go on, or we as a committee go on what they say. That being said, some people are not happy with what we decided, and I will review what I found today to be something that might be debatable with the safety team. So if parents still want to email the Director of Transportation throughout the course of the year, they may. We will make modifications to some of these stops when it snows, just like we have in the past all the time. And we might have to modify pickups during snow. And just like in the past, even on sidewalks, if there's heavy snow, we've had special bus pickups where parents can drop their kids at these certain areas for bus pickups for snow. And during the course of the winter, if there is snow, the buses will stop if a student is walking and pick students up as well. But I'm confident with the safety team's decisions. Although, like I said, I looked at something today, and I'm going to bring something back to the safety team. I think we're in a good spot with times. I haven't heard many complaints about times and travel to school. I did hear on the hot day that it was hot on the buses, and some bus drivers had the windows up. A parent clarified that on social media that those windows were not up, and it was just, or somebody was spinning something that they saw or heard. And sometimes parents on social media elaborate a little much, and people get pretty ramped up. If you have a question or concern, transportation is staffed from 6:15 in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. When that last bus is done, I have somebody on the phone. That's the assistant director or either the director. So we looked at this, and again, we will continue to look at issues as they arise, but that doesn't mean we change just because somebody might have a concern or complaint. We bring it to the safety team.
Yes, Brad?
Can you clarify the process? As myself and I'm sure many other members of the committee, we do get letters from concerned parents. One earlier today requesting a change. Realistically, not in our purview, so that people aren't waiting for us or waiting for the wrong thing. I don't want it to sound like I don't want to answer letters, because I'm glad to.
Absolutely.
But so they know what the proper process is. It would be to call the transportation department first?
It's a call or an email to Karen Villanueva. So we did have an issue, and it was rectified. We had a transportation link that was very old, and at least one person emailed the transportation link that went to a dead email address. Once we found that out, we emailed that person directly. It can be a call or an email to Karen Villanueva with their concern, and there is a bus stop change form that you can actually fill out. That's more helpful than just a call or an email, because there is a process and you can explain on that form, and it's more formalized, but a call or an email can also help. Yes.
I can't remember. Okay, so it happened in my neighborhood a couple of times, and we've talked about it before, but cars passing buses. So my thought, and I don't know how realistic this is, because it does sound like from a lot of the emails that we're receiving, that seems to be something that has happened, they've seen, or they're concerned is going to happen. Is there a way that we can get more police presence on, I'm talking about like the routes, because our policy, kids don't cross rooted roads, correct? So theoretically, if a car is passing a bus, the kids aren't on that side anyway. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. But is there a way that perhaps we could get more visual public safety out in the morning on these rooted roads? We all know the emails that we're receiving, 58, 14, families and bus stops there. Is there a way with the safety team that, maybe it's like they do it once and just kind of see? I know that people have said like, oh, I'm going to post on the Whitman town page or the Hanstown page, but the reality is that people who live in these towns aren't necessarily driving. They're not the people we're worried about driving on these rooted roads. So I didn't know if there was something that you could put out, like, I don't know, one of those, marquee signs, that's not what they're called, at the constructions that's like, bus stops on the road, like, drive carefully, like something like that. I feel like something like that might not fix all the complaints we're getting. It might not fix anything actually, but just to get that out there, because the bus stops are new this year. So if you are used to driving down Route 58 to get to work, you've never seen kids waiting at the end of Birch Bark or the end of Forest Trail, and now you do. So that was just a thought.
We can always ask Derek or Kevin or the two chiefs to see what their staffing is like in the morning. George.
Yeah, and it's usually the overlap of the night crew, the night shift to the day shift. So what's happened a lot is that usually the night shift, I meet down by the tennis courts when I get here, so because they're always here because it's the first school. So yeah, we can definitely make sure that we'll ask them to be on those high visibility roads because it is new for everybody. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
And I'd like to just make one clarification. There were a lot of questions about, or comments about that the kindergarten children used to be dropped off at their homes. That was when we had half-day kindergarten, and we only had, and the people paid for their half-day kindergarten, and they were the only ones on the bus. So it was a different story, and that's the change. And I think some people didn't understand that was, so once we went to full day K, that stopped. So this isn't the first year of doing that, not having the kindergarten stop. So I just want to clarify that that was one of the other questions that people had. So, yes, Dawn.
Glad you mentioned the kindergartners, because I've heard from a parent of a kindergartner who has walked to their bus stop of 0.6 miles. So with the guidelines we heard last meeting, that's within the 3/4 of a mile. What I've learned since then is this particular bus that the student takes is a 15-minute total bus ride. So I certainly understand, and I'm glad we made the accommodations for the solution to the long rides for those students who had long rides. But I'd like to ask if this solution then was applied across the board to where it may not necessarily have been needed. If this particular family who rides this bus and has this bus stop now here, if the bus ride was previously maybe 20 minutes last year, and now it's simply not going in to turn around, and now it's an even shorter bus ride, and that's wonderful that it's short. However, I just keep thinking back to some of the conversations said last year about reasons why we couldn't extend our school day because we have young kindergartners who can't go 6 hours, but now we want them to walk 0.6 miles. And a reference, and this is in a neighborhood, the parent gave me permission, but it's in Old Mansion Lane in Whitman. But for context, if you lived in Hanson on Gorwin Drive and you were at Gerald Street, this kindergartner would be walking to J Street. From Gerald to J Street. That's the distance. So I'm just asking, and if the solution was applied across the board without consideration to perhaps the youngest age bus riders.
Well, yeah, I mean, they looked at everything, and they did the solution across the board, so there wouldn't be anybody saying, well, you're doing it for them, why aren't you doing it for us? And that, nobody's going to be happy with any solution, with all the solutions. Nobody's going to be, so, but like Jeff said, if there's more complaints, Jeff looks into it, and he'll come to the safety committee and check it out.
But when we did the routes, it was within those guidelines. So yeah, even if that shortened the route 5 minutes, that's what we did based on our regular our guideline. Yeah. And that would be my concern is, okay, if we modify for that piece, and again, I'm not about precedent. I'm okay with if it's a safety issue, but if it's a convenience issue, everybody will come up with a different methodology or different question why it's not convenient or why we can't modify. But again, if parents still are concerned, we're open to hearing those concerns, but we're not necessarily going to modify them just based on a concern.
Right. And bus stops at the corner of Route 27, so 5-year-old. Yeah.
I know we did that discussion last year about cameras.
On the stop signs, yeah.
On the stop signs, so you could actually see somebody. But, and Hillary, thank you for bringing it up. It just sort of hit me in the head. when they put up the speed sign, the flashes, there's a camera on those speed signs, and it transmits via cell signal back to the police station. So if someone's speeding, they know who it is, etc. You'd almost think that if someone's going around the bus, I don't know for sure if it could pick that up, perhaps. And also, would that be a deterrent for people to realize, hey, I got to slow down, and oh, geez, there's a school bus and a kid. As far as I'm concerned, I'd love to see a police presence, and I hope they throw the book at anyone that goes around a school bus like that.
And we all know this has been happening. It's an ongoing situation.
Oh, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's not, just limited to us, but I would hope that whoever would try and do that would end up with a real hefty ticket.
Yep. I think we all agree.
Yeah, if I can just add one more
yes,
thing. I've traveled up to Canada through Maine. Maine's probably the most boring 6-hour ride getting up to New Brunswick for many years. A lot of their signs for school buses do show the outline of the school bus. They're yellow, but they show the bright red. And I don't know if I ever seen that, like where the flashes would be. And I think it's kind of a good idea, whether it's a bus turnaround because they've got greater distances, or even for bus stops. And I know coming down that hill at 58, no one wants to be in any sort of situation, particularly at that area. But it might be just some sort of thought if it has to advance that far.
So I will talk to Sergeant Harrington and Officer Harrington and talk to both deputy chiefs, Bombardier and Casey, to see what we can do. They're always willing and accommodating if they have the guys, and they'll do this. I mean, we've done this. We had speeders in the junior lot, and we put a cruiser out there, and it was a deterrent. And then we'll try to hit the education piece of it a little bit as well from the town.
One more follow-up, and I'm not sure if it's in the guide because I don't remember all of any changes. This particular parent at this intersection of Old Mansion and Route 27 said once she's there and the bus picks the students up at that stop, it goes down 27, 4 houses down, and stops to pick a student up. So do the guidelines say no children shall walk along like Route 27? Because I'm trying to understand an explanation, because she's like, we just had to walk 0.6 miles, more than a half mile. And right there I can see the bus goes, and why can't that child?
I don't know the specifics on that.
Yeah,
you know what
okay.
I mean?
But I think that is true. I think that is true that they
Not walking along the route. That's what I felt.
I'm not
right?
sure. And the challenge, and Karen, I think, has done a very good job, and it's very difficult because the 2 towns that we service are major routes all over the place, and it is a challenge. So we'll keep plugging at it. I know you have emails, and I appreciate when you respond or put me on it, so I have an idea of what the response is and then what we can do on our side of it.
Can I just add one more comment? I think, so I teach in a neighboring district, and to ride the bus, the students have to pay $300 to ride the bus. And this year, Marshfield just started charging for buses, and my colleagues who live in Marshfield are not pleased because it's costing their families $300, $600. I think there's a cap of maybe $600. One of the things, and it's fortunate but unfortunate, is we have to follow certain regulations and rules for our reimbursement, but it's free, right? So we know with anything that's free, there's certainly downsides to it. And there are positives. It's free. And that's just one thing that I don't know, because I wasn't at the last meeting when this was really discussed, but that's something that I've kind of been echoing to people, like, it's free. So, you could pay $300 and, you might have the same issues, or, you have this service, and we're very fortunate that we don't have to have our families pay. And it's not perfect, but, I do think, and we know that it was the Hanson families that were having the issues last year with the students being on the bus for an hour, and they are happy. It's better for the kids' social, emotional well-being that they are not on the bus for an hour. So certainly bumps, but I think it's been really positive overall.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to finish this and then I'll get to mine. In your packet too, I put our district enrollment and class size. Really, really happy with our class sizes. Compared to our colleagues, or my colleagues in the areas, our elementary class sizes are some of the best. I think it's a lot of hard work on this, from this committee and from the town to support education. MCAS scores will be released soon, and our district assessments, we will be finishing them up. Our first assessment is this week. We will be reporting out in November to this committee, and I think you will see the benefit of adding interventions and adding or being consistent with lower class sizes, K to 12, that our students are progressing in an upward angle and not being stagnant or moving backwards, even though we had a pandemic a few years ago. So looking at Indian Head, we have 494 students. Pretty easy math. It's almost 20 across the board, give or take. But if you look at this here, I can project out what's going to be coming to Hanson Middle School in the future and the high school. Our enrollment's down from 10 years ago. Don't get me wrong, but we're pretty stable now with our grades, and there are a couple of anomalies. Conley Elementary's got 482. As you see, grade 4 is my bubble class of 95. We made a commitment after retirement this year to add another section. That was 4 in 3rd grade last year, and I know members of this committee were questioned on that. But we made a commitment to make 5 sections this year to balance that out and make it more equitable across the district. Duval is 432. The anomaly there is grade 1, and I made a cut this year. Because it didn't seem efficient to have 56 students in a grade with 4 teachers. So we made a cut there, again, to make it equitable across the district. Duval's number is coming back at 80 at kindergarten, so we bounced right back. So that anomaly of 56 it should be an anomaly. It scared me a little bit though last year. Hanson Middle School has 430 students. Grade 5 is, I didn't do the numbers, but it's close to 100. Grade 6 is 115. And you'll notice English and math have different numbers in social studies and science, and those are for some special education pullouts. Grade 7 is 110. Grade 8 is 95 across the board. Whitman Middle School is 508. Grade 6 is broken up, like I said, with English and math, and then some specialists, or some special programs. Grade 7, 160 and then 174, so you're topping out at 174. Grade 8, we're topping out at 173. With the high school being in our main school of 1016, and our community evening school at 27 at this point. Core classes at the high school average around 23, and electives range between 12 and 40. So you're looking at 40 at the higher end around PE, and some of our electives and some of our APs are running under 15. And again, I don't want to get into budget right now, but as we move forward in our district budget conversations, this committee might have to make some difficult decisions around what class sizes we want to maintain. And if we're not filling certain class sizes, where we're going to move teachers around, or after retirement's not filling them. But I'm very happy with our class sizes and the commitment from both towns as far as financials to keep our class sizes close to 20 in elementary. When I sat here in 2018, there were 25. I know my predecessor had elementary class sizes of 26 and 27. Granted, our enrollment has gone down a little, so that's helped. I will caution this committee as well, though. We have 200 plus English language learners in this district right now, and that's on the increase. We will be receiving more Chapter 70 money for our subgroups or our specialty groups of students that are English language learner, special education, and socioeconomically challenged. We do get more money for that, but that just doesn't offset one student. It's a bonus. We have had to employ legally to service our ELs, more EL teachers than we've had in the past. So we're pretty good right now, but if we get a bump midway through the year, we might have to add a tutor or a teacher. And remember, our district budget has already been finalized, so there's not a lot of flexibility in our hires as we go. So when folks are saying, why did you move some money around, or what did you have to do? I do have a population of students that changes throughout the course of the year. I showed you that we had enrollments from July to August. We had another 30 students move in from August to Labor Day with a push around Labor Day, which is good for us. We maintained. We did lose students, they withdrew, but we did have a bump. Again, managing class size to the best of our ability. The principals do a very nice job servicing our students. Pre-K to 12, our postgrads, as you saw Rocket Riley here today, is in our postgrad program, and we do service our special education students. And if you're looking at Whitman Middle, I do have a class of one, or a class of, that's really not one class, that teacher has 3 or 4 students, but there's one per grade. So we're servicing our students in a very positive way. I think you will be pleased with the results that we have from our interim assessments and from our MCAS scores that we're on the move, as I said before, and I'd like to maintain this, and you're going to hear this as we progress into the FY25 budget. But keeping class sizes low is also expensive. Any questions on numbers? Yes.
Do you have the school choice numbers?
I don't.
Okay.
Off the top of my head. I'll get that for our next meeting, okay? Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Chair.
Yeah.
Jeff, not tonight if you don't have the information, but if you could share about the number of English language learner populations and how that might impact class sizes. I know there may be some teachers who are managing 3, 4, 5 students who come into their class and aren't speaking English as a first language, and that may be different than another classroom that, you know, has all English speaking.
So at our next meeting, I'll have Nikki present on our numbers and the interventions we've had to do specific for ELs, K to 12, because we have students across the board.
Sure, thank you.
Any other questions on numbers? Okay, I get permission to move along. We have a guest here today, our OPM for our Whitman Middle School project. Some of our, we had quite a few public comments today on the project today. From some of the folks that have hung out in the gallery. So on our agenda, we have the vote, which is letter I. Tonight we have been asked, and we need to move forward. The building committee voted 9-0 with 1 abstention to move the project forward, and in your packet is the cost to the overall project. Written by our bond, John, what's the name of our bond person? It's called, the person who wrote the letter in the packet.
From Block and Lord is our bond counsel.
Our bond counsel, that's the word I was looking for. But I have Mike here because at the Whitman Selectmen meeting, there was some conversation about the building project, and I forwarded you a letter from the Town Administrator, Mary Beth Carter. It's not in your packet, but I sent you an email earlier today as I got that. The Board of Selectmen has asked the school committee to consider not voting the project tonight. That was the ask from Mary Beth. So I asked Mike today, I was on a call with him, to kind of explain where we are and what would happen if we didn't vote that project tonight. Would we be out of the queue? Would MSBA turn our backs to us? So Mike, if you don't mind coming up to the podium, Mike Carroll is from Colliers. He's our he's our project manager for the project. He's relatively new to the project, came in about, 3 weeks ago? I hit the ground running.
Big time, and I had to go backwards running.
And we're here, so.
Okay, before you start, Mike, I think everybody, with that letter, did not say what the vote was with the Board of Selectmen. It was not unanimous, it was 3-2. Okay, so it was not a unanimous vote.
To send us that letter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Sorry, Mike.
No worries. So just to maybe bring everybody up to speed, and please jump in with questions, or so I make sure I'm going in the right direction here. But on August 28th, was the last meeting of the school building committee, and as we mentioned just a few minutes ago, at that meeting there was a lot of discussions about budgets. There was a lot of discussions about the project, and we looked at options, different options, things of that nature. At the end of that meeting, there was a vote taken to move forward with the school project as it currently stands. It was a pretty time-sensitive vote. At that time, we were looking to put together what we call the schematic design package, submission package to the MSBA. And so we voted that on the 28th, and then on the 31st, that package was sent to the MSBA. So that is currently in with the MSBA. They're reviewing it. They've given us a few questions. They're actually looking to actually talk to us about budgets next week, things like that. So it's in process right now. The typical process with that is we send it to our MSBA project coordinator and the project manager, the individuals that are working with us specifically on our project. They then in turn review it with their bosses and with the other people in the MSBA, ultimately with the goal of bringing it to the board, the MSBA board, on October 25th. So that's kind of where we're at right now. That, you know, if nothing else changes, that's the path forward. So they would be voting on October 25th. The assumption here is that they would be approving us. I don't know that I've ever seen a rejection on that. As long as we follow their procedures, which we did, and as long as we answer any questions they have, it's usually a process that we have to go through. From that, they would give us what they would determine is the project funding agreement, which actually defines our overall project budgets and all the parts and pieces. And we would then have a town meeting potentially on October 30th. And then a ballot vote on November 4th. So that's where we currently stand here. So the question is, you know, if we were going to reconsider it, what are the steps to that, and, you know, what would we have to do? And I'll just tell you right now, from here forward, you know, I was pretty definitive about everything from here back. Here forward, it's a little less definitive, because I think the first thing we'd have to do is the MSBA is our partner in this, right? They're working with us, and we can't be making a decision on this without at least involving them, without talking with them, getting advice from them, and understanding if we do this, what does that mean they have to do, or what does that mean they can do? So it's trying to understand that. What I had talked about this morning is I kind of saw three potential paths forward here, if you will. We could ask the school building committee. So the next school building committee meeting is on Tuesday the 19th. So we could ask the school building committee to either, to reconsider this, right? And there's probably a million different options here, but option one would be to reconsider it and do nothing, right? And continue with the current path. Option two, on the other end, is reconsider and ask for an adjustment to the overall project, ask the MSBA for adjustment to time, ask them to withdraw our proposal. And that's where we have to get their input on what does that withdrawal mean. And we'd have to understand, is that withdrawal, you know, for a week, a month, a year? You know, what kind of duration are we looking at there? And I think that duration depends on what the building committee votes. Are they voting no change at all? Are they voting some smaller adjustments, which we can do relatively quickly, or are we looking at larger adjustments, which would take the design team a longer time to adjust, basically? And from that perspective, with the MSBA, the important thing here is once they vote, if we do nothing, once they vote and if they've approved us and they've approved us for a funding agreement, that's kind of the point of no return. Once they've done that, we've got to move forward with that project. There's always an ability to make slight adjustments, tweak this, adjust that. You know, oh, that room was 800 square feet, and we adjusted the walls, and now it's 810 square feet. It's not, you know, adding a wing or taking a wing off or making major adjustments after that board review and that board approval.
Mike, is there, I know we talked, the total amount of this project right now is $135,289,673. Is there any flexibility in that number? I know we talked about certain costs at our last meeting. We got a little, there was a vote to rescind. That vote didn't carry, but there was some talk about some flexibility about maybe losing some costs that weren't impactful to the project itself, meaning not cutting out class space or anything. Is there any flexibility in there?
I think there is. I think when we met with the school building committee on the 28th, we tried to categorize the options that we presented in kind of 3 groupings. Grouping 1 is just what you were talking about, the things that we could potentially adjust that really don't affect program and they don't affect building operation and really are relatively easy for us to incorporate. Then we had a category 2, which could affect things and are a little bit harder. Then we had a category 3, which is more substantial changes. So the category 1s, the 2 main ones in that were, we have what's called project contingency. So as we move forward with the project, we're going to sign a contractor up, for example, and we're going to sign them up for a contract value X. At some point through the process, there's going to be some change orders. There's going to be an unforeseen condition. There's going to be an owner enhancement. We might have to make some adjustments. There might be something wrong with the documents that we have to do a little tweak. There's always change orders within a project.
Not this building. Yeah. 0 change orders.
Well, it was a CM at risk, right? Yeah. So.
0.
But anyway, there's always change orders, and we have a contingency fund built into your budget. So, in other words, if we have a change order on day 1 when we have a change order, we're not looking to go back and ask for more money. It's already built within your project. So, we made a recommendation back on August 15th and then revisited it on the 28th of that contingency value. And I think we're at about 9%. It's actually 2 different items. It's hard cost contingency, which is things that would go with the contractor, and then it's soft cost, which is everything else. That could be designer fees, that could be additional OPM fees, it could be FF&E, it could be moving costs, legal costs, all the other stuff that isn't the contractor.
Can you define FF&E?
Sorry, FF&E is furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So that's all the tables, the chairs, the desks, the bookshelves, anything. I always say if I was a giant and I shook your building, anything that falls out, that's FF&E. So so that's how you kind of consider that. So we had recommended 9%. 9% is probably a little bit higher than I typically have recommended in the past. If you asked me 5 years ago, it was 5 to 7%. And the reason why we recommended a little bit more here or more here is basically because of the uncertainty that we have with supply chains and COVID. And if you had asked me 6 months ago, I would have told you the market was going to be slowing down by now, because we saw interest rates rising, we saw the commercial market starting to slow down, we saw residential markets starting to slow down. There was a lot of office space available in downtown Boston, things like that. So we thought we were going to see maybe a leveling off, and it has not happened. Historically, we can say that we if you look over the lifespan, typical inflation, typical escalation on a project is about 3%. We've been carrying about 5% rate, lately with COVID, because it just continues to go up. So that's why we had the 9%. But that's something I think on the 28th we had made a suggestion that it could potentially be reduced to 7% and still be comfortable. I said if we wanted to go lower than that, we could certainly have that discussion. But what's happening there is, as you lower that contingency, you're potentially raising your risk level. And I think at 7%, your risk is still where I would say is manageable and where I would say I'm comfortable. At 9%, obviously, we're more comfortable. But the other part of that is, at the end of the project, if we haven't spent that contingency, that's town money. That's money coming back to you. And I will say on virtually, I can't say all my jobs, but virtually all my jobs, I've always had that ability to return some of that contingency back.
Yes. Can you explain the amount carried in Tier 1? You were recommending or showing the increased amount of FF&E that,
yes,
compared to what's allowable from MSBA, the reason why it's higher, and the possibility of incorporating that into contingency,
yes,
to mitigate the risk.
So there's 2 different categories of FF&E. That's furniture, fixtures, and equipment. One is, I'll say, the typical FF&E, desks, chairs, bookshelves, things like that. The other is technology-related items. So that the contractor is going to run the wires to a wireless access point. but the wireless access point itself comes under the technology budget. They're going to run the wires to the MDF closet, but all the switches and the routers and all the technical stuff in there is supplied by the FF&E. We sometimes projectors like up on the wall there are an FF&E item. Sometimes they're contracted. There's always a little bit of gray area there, but it's those type of things that are FF&E. And I'll tell you, I've been in OPM for going on 13 years now, and 13 years ago, the MSBA had a rule, and it was $1,200 per student for FF&E and $1,200 a student for technology. Sitting here today, it's $1,200 a student for FF&E and $1,200 a student for technology. So in the last 12 years, that number has not gone up. I would say 5 years ago, before COVID, we were seeing the technology number was starting to creep up above that $1,200. It was going to $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 a student. Again, depending on the district. I was able to, on most of my jobs, manage the hard cost, the desk. A lot of times you have an old school, maybe the teacher's desks have to be replaced, but the student desks, a certain number of them have been replaced over the years. They can be brought in. So there was cost savings methods that you can do. But even with those now, the $1,200 a student for each of those is just, it's too low. We're seeing some districts carry $2,000 a student or even $2,500 a student for each of those. What we had made as a recommendation was to adjust that $1,200 on each of those to $1,800. And we felt at $1,800, it's a little bit of a challenge, but we felt we could do it. If we end up, again, coming in under that money can go back into that contingency fund and either be used for something else as needed or ultimately be returned back if there's savings. If we go over that value, we're taking money out of that contingency. So one of the thoughts we had, the two of the main items on that easy tier was reduce contingency and maybe reduce the FF&E. But if you're reducing the FF&E, we're not going to be able to manage for $1,200, so we're going to be spending. We just know that we're going to be spending some contingency to actually cover those costs down the line.
Just another question for you, Mike. So you and I spoke a little today after I got the letter from Mary Beth about postponement. And I know at our last building committee meeting, we talked a little bit about postponement, and it was a 6-month potentially. The MSBA would have to grant us that postponement, correct? It's not a done deal, right?
That's correct. So there's kind of maybe two parts to that. The first part is when we entered into our agreement at feasibility study, we agreed to provide them our SD package within a certain time period. I don't have the exact date on it, but I think it's the 17th of October. So technically, the board is voting on the 25th, so it's after that date. But because we submitted in August and they had it, they said we don't have to ask for an extension. Mm-hmm. But if we were to withdraw our proposal or ask to withdraw, one of the first things we'd have to do is then ask for an extension of that time. We'd have to explain to them why, and I'll just tell you from that perspective, if we hadn't submitted our package already and we were just going to them saying we need an extension and we have these reasons why, the MSBA is very accommodating. They're there to help the district. They're there to help you through this process. They don't want to continue to extend and extend and extend, but if you have a logical reason that you have to do some reconsideration, there's really typically no problem there. The second part of the MSBA approval is the fact that we've already submitted it, and what does that mean? The good news is it hasn't gone to the board to be voted on yet. So I would think that they would allow us to withdraw it, but we'd certainly have to have a discussion with them before I would say that we could. I think that that's part of that next step potentially.
Mike, if we vote to postpone our vote till, say, like next week, because we want to take off that tier 1, what was it, about $5 million? About $5 million.
Yes.
To cut. That would still be with all time frames, correct?
That would still, sorry?
Be within our time frames of getting it to MSBA, not having to extend with MSBA or anything, right? Or would we still have to confer with them if we cut back that $5 million?
So we'd have to confer with them.
We would.
Is the short answer. That maybe the little bit longer answer on that is They haven't finalized the 3011, and those of you that were in the building committee, we talked a lot about that. The 3011 form is their budget form. It's you plug in all the numbers, all the parts and pieces. We don't just say, hey, a project is $135 million. You say the stairs are this and the bookshelves are that, and when you add it all up, it gets to the bottom number. So they have a pretty complicated form because they have a lot of what we call eligible and ineligible costs, and they have a lot of rules and regulations on that. So the form kind of fills that out. So that form is what's going to actually feed into the project funding agreement. So where I'm going with it is, what we're talking about is going back and asking them to lower that number, which would be better than raising the number. If we were asking them to raise it, I think it would be you'd have to withdraw it and you'd have to do it. If we're lowering the number, I don't know what the answer is on that. We'd have to have that discussion. So in theory, if we go out on Tuesday and there was a vote to adjust that number down by something that doesn't affect the program, like, in other words, we're not having the designers going back and redrawing things. The best case scenario would be that they'd allow us to just adjust that number down. I don't want you to feel that that's a sure thing by any means. I think that's a question we would ask of them. So I think in that scenario, what we're talking about is a meeting on the 19th. And I think this committee would probably have to meet very shortly there afterwards. But between now and that meeting on the 19th, we'd have to have those discussions with the MSBA, or at least start those discussions with them. I would reach out to my project manager, my project coordinator, and I don't think that they'd be comfortable answering those. They'd have to probably bring the more senior people from the MSBA into a call for that.
Just another question. So I have the template of a motion to vote the project tonight. If the project isn't voted tonight, and say we're going to do this on Wednesday, we could revote. If we do vote the project today, is there an opportunity to lower the cost after the vote here today?
So the one thing I'll say is the funding agreement that we're putting in place, ultimately, whatever we sign, we have to prove that we have the funds available, that we can, make the payments our share of it, if you will, and everything. But it's really an upper limit, if you will. So we can always go less. Okay. We can always talk to the designer. Now, when I say go less, it's less with some tweaking. It's less with adjusting contingent, or just it's not cutting something off of the building or making substantial changes. So, through the design process, there's always adjustments, and we can certainly work within that. And if this committee or the building committee directed us that, hey, even though we know we have a budget of 135, we really want to target 130, or that's certainly doable. Oh, well, I mean, it's certainly the process is doable. Whether we can actually
do it,
develop it is the second part of that. Yeah.
Is there, and just one final question for me, outside of the project going forward from town meeting to the ballot, if certain things aren't met timely, could we go back to square one? Like, we started this process in 2018. We wrote a statement of interest in 2018. The first couple months I sat at this desk, or at this table, and we're in 2023, and we're looking at, if all goes well, we're looking at an opening in 2027. Is there a possibility, if things don't go, or if we don't hit targets, to go back to statement of interest and being 5 years out?
There definitely is. I'll give you an example. In a previous life with the previous company, I wasn't on the project. We were working with the town of Swampscott. Swampscott went forward, and they actually had a vote, and I'm going back, this was probably 8 years ago now. They had a vote, and the vote failed, and it failed rather substantially. It wasn't like a 51-49, it was like a 80% no. So at that point, that project stopped. Swampscott then reissued their statement in interest to the MSBA. I believe they were denied twice, and then on the third time, they got into the MSBA program. They were allowed to move forward with a new elementary school, same thing as they were doing before. So in that process, though, what we've been doing the last year and a half here is feasibility and schematic design. When Swampscott went back to do that, the MSBA said that's fine, but we already paid for that once. So we're not participating in it this time.
No reimbursement.
So that first phase was all town money to get them back to where you are today, basically. So they had to pay all that money up front. I will say I was part of the team the second time. We got a positive vote, and that building's being built as we speak. So, but in that situation, that building is going to be substantially more down the line. You know, I mentioned earlier escalation. That's the cost of, you know, everybody's getting raises every year, or hopefully everybody's getting raises every year, and the cost of materials are going up, and everything's going up. So you build a building today, like one of the things we're doing is we're projecting out for building in 2 years. That's part of that, you know, what we try and estimate. And I don't have a crystal ball, you know, but we have estimators that are very good at their job. But you know, before COVID, that job was a lot easier. With COVID, you know, we're trying to do a project, and all of a sudden we find out roofing materials are shortage, and then you get the roofing materials, and then the insulation was shortage, and now it's switchgear. You know, there's always it seems like there's different things out there. So we're pivoting, we're fixing this, we're working towards that. But there's always something out there, and you know, it's just a different world from the construction standpoint.
Mike, I was going to ask about the escalating costs. And I know you guys do your best to guesstimate in the future, but can you go backwards and speak to how costs have escalated from previous projects till now? You kind of, you know, ballpark numbers and whatnot?
I can't. I mean, I'll tell you the costs have escalated substantially. I will tell you, I've actually worked with AI3, who's your designer here, and they do a very efficient design. Like one of the discussion points we had on the 28th is sometimes you say, oh, well, we'll just value engineer the project. Let's cut, you know, $5 million out, you know, value engineering. And, you know, people think, oh, well, we'll drop the tile in the bathroom from, you know, 8 feet high to 6 feet high, or down to 4 feet high, or we'll do they're so good, they've already done a lot of that stuff. They've already got you a very efficient building. So we kind of caution people that you're not going to be able to find what I call like the low-hanging fruit, the easy stuff, because they've already taken that into consideration. So, you know, they did a job with me in Watertown a few years ago. Project probably finished 2.5 years ago, or about 2 years, yeah, about 2.5 years ago in the spring. So they would have been where you are 6 years ago, maybe. That project was about $450 a square foot. We're at $770.
No reason to expect that's not going to continue, right? That trend.
Yeah, I mean, the trend is things always go up. You know, you might get some leveling off points. You might get a small market correction. You know, I mean, the one thing I'll say is we're projecting. I mentioned a 5% escalation. We're projecting, I think, a 4.5 going forward here. That's the proper thing to do. That's what we're going to recommend you to do. Do I think that there's going to be a market correction between now and when we bid? Maybe. You know, if you look historically, the construction market has kind of 7-year cycles. You kind of go up and you go down, and all those peaks are 7 years apart. I think we're in year 11 of this 7 years. Like it's you know, it hasn't gotten down, and I think a lot of that had to do with the COVID funds coming in and, you know, giving resurgence to allow the construction market to continue on. So again, I can't tell you when that market correction is going to come. There will be one, but a market correction is that it's, hey, we thought something was going to be 80 million and it came in at 78 million. It's not like we thought it was 80 million and it's going to come in at 50 million. You know, it's a slight adjustment, and as you look at it, that market correction still is going to be, you know, in the grand scheme of things, you know, everything, you might have a small localized dip, and if you hit it right, then you hit it right, but we hope for that, but we can't plan for that.
Sure.
And just one more thing, Mike, in your experience as an OPM, is it a common occurrence for a district to go for a new project with MSBA and get selected the first time, or are there multiple times bites at the apple, or are districts turned away?
So I would say if I had a new district calling me today and saying, hey, we're putting a statement of interest in, I would say, you know, you should expect to potentially get in 3 to 5 years. Like, I don't think you're not, it's very unusual to put a statement of interest in the first time and get accepted right away.
Thank you for that. So I just want to make a comment again publicly. We were accepted in our first go-round. Statement of interest, MSBA accepted us on our first go-round because they saw the need for a new middle school. I think I Googled the South Shore Voc Tech. Mr. Hickey's been looking since 2015 from MSBA for an addition to South Shore VOTEC, and I believe Mr. Hickey went to all local towns to say we can't wait for MSBA anymore, so local towns are supporting a $10 million renovation. I might be off with the numbers. Mr. Hickey's a local resident and a superintendent over at VOTEC. And I know we are part of VOTEC, and I know our towns approved that renovation without MSBA help because South Shore VOTEC hasn't gotten the support of MSBA. Whitman-Hanson did for Whitman Middle School in their first go-around. So I think it's important to say it's usually a couple bites at the apple. You're turned down the first couple times. We were not. We were selected in December of 2019 to start this project. And again, when I talk longevity, it took us a while to write the statement, to be interviewed, the process, to go in front of the board, to be selected. And we didn't stop through COVID. The process is the process. The building committee did not take COVID off. We met virtually, and then we met in person as soon as we could. So that's the process, and we're at a critical point right now in 2023 for a building project that we hope to open in 2027. If we postpone, you start rolling the dice around what is going to fail in the project, what is going to fail at the middle school, and then getting back into the queue for potential another bite at the apple 3 to 5 years from now, just starting that process again. So again, I just wanted to say publicly, we've talked about this at building committee meeting, and we're not live at building committee, it's a recording, so some folks don't watch it, and that's why I've asked Mike to be here and clarify for this committee, because you have an important decision to make on where we are with the middle school. It is not, some folks have said it's the Taj Mahal, like this building is the Taj Mahal. It's not. It's a building for our kids that will last for the next 50 years and should be, as one of our public commenters said, it's a building for our future, for our kids. It's going to be great, but it's not over the top. It's an auditorium for the community. It's a gym for the community. It's an opportunity for our kids. It's classrooms for our kids. It's not new ball fields all across the board. That would add more money. It's 5 through 8, so we align and give our students equal opportunity and the best possible education for our students. And again, that was voted on in segments from this committee. This wasn't a change, and there were differing opinions as we went through. All our votes weren't 12, 15-0. There were people that selected different things. So again, with Mike here, and an important move here today with this vote to move it forward, I'm glad you could say, you could always dial it back a little bit. Absolutely. And it doesn't necessarily require a vote of the committee. It can always be dialed back a little bit as we move forward. But if we don't hit our targets with MSBA, we could move to the side or be delayed quite a bit.
Okay, and I want to say something else that isn't brought up, and we talk about it at the building committee all the time, and somebody did mention it today, about what happens if we don't do this? To get this building up to code, as Fred used that term, is quoted about $60 million. There's no reimbursement for that. It also doesn't take into consideration the rental or the cost of portables, because the students can't be in the building if you are making it ADA compliant, if you are removing asbestos, if you are doing any of that type of work, electrical work, students can't be in that building. And is it for the cafeteria that has the asbestos in the ceiling? So where do kids eat? In their classroom? Things like that. It's not just, okay, we don't need it, because come down the line, the town is going to be getting capital bills from the school committee to have this repaired, and once you open a can of worms, you know what happens. Everything starts falling. So we have to be really conscious of that too, that this is a necessary building. Some people feel that it should only be 6 to 8. Some people think it should not have an auditorium, but that was the need presented by the educational part when it was submitted. So if this committee, like we said, votes for this amount, but then the building committee decides on Tuesday that they would, in the meantime you could find out, taking off that $5 million, Would we have to come back and vote the new amount, or would that be?
So I would think if this committee was thinking about asking the building committee to reconsider, my recommendation would be to reconvene this committee maybe the day after and pause that. But the one other thing I'd like to maybe just expand a little bit on what you said with those annual repairs and things like that. There's a requirement if you spend over a third of the building value within 5 years, you have to then bring everything up to code. So in my hometown, we had one elementary school that they were putting a new roof on, and just the roof on that building triggered that.
It would on this building, I'm sure.
So just, you can be judicious in how you allocate monies on a new building or on a building that needs regular maintenance, things like that. But if you need as much as that building needs right now, you could very easily trigger that because that building current assessed value is probably relatively low. So if you trigger that $65 million or $63 million base repair all has to happen once you trigger that third of the value. I don't know if anybody knows the assessed value of that building, but it might. I know. It might be $10, $20 million or something like that. It's probably not a huge value on an older building.
I just want to I don't mean to correct you, Jeff, but there are no new fields, but we are replicating.
Yes, correct.
So the town's not going to lose out on any soccer fields.
Correct. Right.
That's correct.
So what we're taking away, we are replicating. I just want to make sure.
What I meant to say is that we're not putting in new field, like.
Right, no additional. No additional.
Yes, thank you.
And we're not refurbishing what's already there, with the exception of one field that is going to get destroyed during construction.
With equipment.
Which actually the Special Olympics plays on that field for softball. So they'll have a new field.
Excuse me, Mike, is there any solar, rooftop solar, or has that been deemed feasible?
So right now the building is designed net zero ready. So the solar isn't on there. The building is designed that it can take the solar. I believe we were considering solar as an alternate.
It's an alternate.
But right now, that add alternate would be over and above the numbers we're talking about right now.
So the electrical system will be designed where it's prepared for it to take it in the future?
That's right. We typically have like a disconnect that can go up to the roof. We actually add in conduit runs to get you from the main electric room up to the roof. The structure of the roof is designed to support the weight and things of that. And that's actually one of the requirements of LEED to get the LEED certification. And actually with the new stretch code, they're actually requiring us to do that with new buildings.
So if LEED is involved, it's state-of-the-art lighting controls, motion sensors, obviously all LED, all that. So you're saving money energy-wise.
The insulation in the building, the insulation in the windows, the one of the things that's really come to the forefront is not even the insulation is up, but it's the weather sealing, the air sealing, and you may hear about that buildings are so tight now that you have to, even houses have to have proper ventilation now, not just heating.
Continuously to let air circulate.
Exactly. Yeah.
What was it, 4% that we picked up?
So that's a good point. So the MSBA reimbursement rate, they have a base rate for you, and then we have incentive points that we can get, and we're targeting right now that we're going to get 4 points, 4 additional points, 3 points because of the efficiency of our building, and 1 point because we're doing enhanced indoor air quality. So again, indoor air quality is something that people may not have heard of 5 years ago, but everybody knows about that now, right? With COVID, so we're not just doing standard air changes; we're doing above that. So we're getting an enhanced air quality.
Thank you.
Yes, Dawn.
I'm glad you brought up the air quality because I had a note to talk about the importance of the staff that we have working in this building right now. We can't forget there's children in there and there's staff. And we hear about other town buildings and the nature of the importance of upgrading the working conditions of employees. So I know there's 500 kids. I don't know how many staff members we have, but I know we have air quality issues right now. So I just want to commend the building committee for doing a wonderful job in preparing this project, and also not leaving our children behind. And I say that in a forward-thinking process of preschool. So I have a feeling over the next 5 to 10 years, we may outgrow the preschool we have within this district because of the need and also the movement towards early childhood education. And I think investing today in this building, which may provide an opportunity to allow more preschool kids within our district somewhere, it will save the towns or the town, town, from having to build a preschool, perhaps in the future. So I hope that that's another thing we can think about over the benefit and the advantage of supporting our whole community, community-wide. And I did attend the Board of Selectmen meeting last night, and the only feedback I have is that there was one comment about South Shore VOTEC and how they're making an investment and the town's going to have an additional debt with that, and that it is what it is with the South Shore VOTEC. It is what it is. And we've just, as a town, that's going to be the cost. Well, I would remind folks that it's South Shore Regional Vocational School and it's Whitman-Hanson Regional School District. So we're both regionals. So I hope that we can have that same sort of embrace when we accept, improvements to one school district, that we as a community will accept all the improvements needed in the town. Yes, Steve?
Yeah, Mike, LEEDs, is that still a term used?
Yes.
With the LEEDs building?
A LEED certified building,
LEED
correct.
certified. I work for the presidential libraries, and the Clinton Library is one of those. It's the only one that's a LEEDs building. Does that give us anything else in addition? I mean, I don't know what, they built theirs back in 2004.
So the LEED certification itself doesn't give you anything special, if you will, but the process and the design that goes into getting you those LEED certifications gives you a great deal. It gives you a very efficient building. It's going to save you on energy costs. It's going to save you on maintenance costs, things of that nature. It's going to give you better air quality for your students. It's not going to stop that person who's always hot from being always hot and that person always cold being always cold, but it's going to make your building more comfortable. It's going to make the general population there. And there's a lot that goes into that, a lot that goes into the design. And it also gets down to the recycling process during construction. The more we recycle during construction, the more LEED points you get. It's putting bike racks out in front of the building so kids can ride their bikes to school. It's putting bike racks out for teachers and maybe having a shower available at the teacher. I'm not saying that that's what we have, but there's all kinds of things like that with LEED that really go to improving your building and improving the quality of the building, not only for the students but also for the staff.
Thank you. And one other thing was the whole global crisis for materials being shipped and different things. And I know the assistant superintendent, I'm not going to make eye contact, is still waiting for me to give him a ride in a big green thing that's sitting in my garage because I can't get certain parts. But do you think that will continue? I mean, I know you're not a forecaster, you don't have a crystal ball, but how do you see that in measuring?
So we're continuing to monitor that daily. Right now what we're seeing is switchgear, which any new building needs a new switchgear. That's basically the main electric panel in the building. 12 to 14 months from the day you order to the day you get it. So
meter sockets.
Meter sockets. I was just going to say, we have a project right now that we're doing a library. I believe it's out in Stowe, and it's a municipal light department. So you would think, being a local light department, you have a little bit of pull, and they're saying it might be 3 years before they can get a meter socket. So there's things like that we're constantly evaluating. We're constantly looking at our schedules to make sure that we are doing a realistic schedule. But the other thing I would say, before COVID, you might have heard the term lean construction. Lean construction was something that was taken from manufacturing, and what the idea was, you don't bring everything to build your house onto the site on day one. You bring the concrete into the foundation, and then you bring in the wood, and then you bring in the siding, and then you bring it in as needed. And that was really a buzzword and something that was really being taken to heart, especially if you were, say, downtown Boston or on a small site or things like that. Lean construction has kind of gone out the window. Now we say, get it there. We'll put a storage trailer on site, and I'd rather rather have my windows, I'd rather have my, whatever I can get, order it as soon as you can and get it there as quickly as you can. And that way there, if you order it and it's supposed to be here in 10 weeks, and 10 weeks comes and it's not here yet, and it's still 3, maybe it's not going to affect your schedule. So that's something that we really work with the contractors. We monitor that weekly with a meeting with them. How are you making it out on your submittals? What are you hearing in the market? Is there anything that you have a concern on? If there's one product that has a long lead time, is there something that we could substitute that is a similar product, but we can get quicker? So it's an ongoing thing. I mentioned roofing installation was the glass was an issue for a while, getting the right type of glass for the windows. The switch gear is probably the single biggest thing that I'm seeing right now. That and maybe still microchips and electronics in like HVAC equipment and even light fixtures. A lot of the light fixtures are getting pretty smart nowadays, and you have some lead times there.
All right, so the task before us, I will, if we vote to do this, it says, I move that the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District hereby appropriates the amount of...
This is pertinent to the motion. And what the building committee voted was additional language to what you're reading. At the bottom, I also move that within 7 days from the date on which this vote is adopted, the secretary be and hereby is instructed to notify the Board of Selectmen of each of the member towns in this district as to the amount and general purposes of the debt herein authorized as required by district agreement in Chapter 71, Section 16, small letter D of the Mass General Laws. And there were also 2 accompanying documents that we did vote on, a sample Town of Whitman special meeting vote, as well as the sample for the ballot question.
Yeah.
And
we don't have to do all
I just wanted to ask Mr. Stanbrook, I did send an email, just the piece that the bond council sent you, or do we, because what it was that the building committee voted, do we need to vote the same? And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Carroll, all 3 pages were included in the submittal?
So we did forward all 3 to the MSBA just to keep them informed. Again, they're our partners. We have not heard back from them just yet, but yes, we have forwarded that.
Okay. John, what say you?
Our bond counsel from Lock and Lord, Brenda McDonough, sent me an email and said, I can read it to you if you want. See the attached clean and red line versions. The contingency to be removed in this case was just the contingency language in the district school committee vote. So that's why it's, that was added there to address the timing issue. I have added the Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion contingency back to the town's vote. I assume the town wants their approval of the district borrowing to be contingent on the town voting a debt exclusion for the project. So that language needs to be in the town's motion. It does not need to be in the article. So it is as you see it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so this is... I move that the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District hereby appropriates the amount of $135,289,673 million for the purpose of paying the cost of demolishing the existing Whitman Middle School, constructing a new Whitman Middle School at 100 Corthell Avenue in the town of Whitman, Massachusetts, including the payment of all costs incidental or related thereto the project, which said new facility shall have an anticipated useful life as an educational facility for the instruction of school children of at least 50 years, and for which the district may be eligible for a school construction grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, said amount to be expended at the direction of the Whitman Middle School Building Committee. To meet this appropriation, the district is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to Chapter 71, Section 16D of the General Laws and the District Agreement as amended, or pursuant to any other enabling authority. The district acknowledges that the MSBA grant program is non-entitlement discretionary program based on need as determined by the MSBA, and any project cost the district incurs in excess of any grant approved by and received from the MSBA shall be the sole responsibility of the district. provided further that any grant the district may receive from the MSBA shall not exceed the lesser of 63 3/31%, 63.31% of eligible approved project costs as determined by the MSBA. Or, number 2, the total maximum grant amount determined by the MSBA and that amount of borrowing authorized pursuant to this vote shall be reduced by any grant set forth in the project funding agreement that may be executed between the district and the MSBA. I also move that within 7 days from the date on which this vote is adopted, the Secretary be and hereby is instructed to notify the Board of Selectmen of each of the member towns of this district as to the amount and general purposes of the debt herein authorized as required by the district agreement and by Chapter 71, District 16, Section 16D of the general laws.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Second?
Second. Okay. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. It is unanimous.
Thanks, Mike. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
I'll stick around. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
And you'll be here on Tuesday?
I will.
4:30.
See you then. Okay.
So in your packet, I have projected goals for this school year. They're really district goals. I hate to say they're just mine because we work together collaboratively as a central office. I'm going to ask you to read through them. I will ask for an approval in October and email me with any questions, clarifying questions that you have. I also added something we talked about last year as far as start times in a couple of scenarios. That will be something that I know the committee has received emails about. We actually talked about certain things like start times in policy last night. And if that's a goal that you want me to officially move into this, I will. It's going to be, again, the committee approves my goals as is. I think we collaboratively put together some good goals for student achievement, for culture, some things going on this year. Again, I want you to read through them. We can discuss in October. Again, I'm looking at time as well. And if you have feedback or questions on specific goals, shoot me an email so I can address them publicly and clean it up to what you want to see. Chris.
So you mentioned possibly adding start times to your goals?
So last year it was a goal. The challenge I have with goals sometimes is if we rely on the budget to make, I don't fulfill the goal if it's financial. I could propose, and we did propose last year, a start time adjustment at no cost, and we adjusted and we proposed one at cost. We've done a lot of the, the challenge I'm sitting here is I agree with the research around start times. I was a principal here. I'd like to move the start times. The superintendent, there are 2 ways to do it, and it's a no cost affecting certain students, and it's a cost, or it's a cost, and something that we're going into a budget cycle that I'm concerned about. So I will add this if the committee so chooses, but we have some alternatives to have the committee decide. Again, I don't have it as an official goal on this document. I just added it as a supplement. It was something we talked about at length last year, and it was part of the goal process that we had in the working group that summer before. Things were modified, changed, but there can be adjustments if we go forward. It's just a matter of what the committee so chooses. But again, feedback on putting it in officially or something that the committee wants to go forward, getting some information is something I'm open to.
Yeah, so can I just...
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
I just want to make it clear that we'll keep our promise not to kick this down the road. We're going to revisit it this year, as we said last year we would. So I just want to clarify that we're not going to not address this, whether it's in the goals or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to comment, Jeff. I, as an educator who sets goals, I get to set my goals because I know what my strengths and weaknesses are, and I know the students that are in front of me. I don't know, and it might be different for superintendents, but these goals should be your goals and things that you and the leadership team want to work on and get better at. I don't think it's fair to you for it. You could have 10 different goals. Hey, we want you to do this, we want you to do this. That's kind of our job as like, to your point, Chris, like, we know we have to talk about start times. I don't think that we should be directing the superintendent to what his goals should be. That's not for the educators who set goals and 2-year plans. That's not how that process goes. It's self-reflective. It's reflective on your practice, on the students and the population that's in front of you. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you've got to do. I don't know if it's different for a superintendent, but it seems not okay. Sorry, it's late. That's not the right word, but it doesn't seem right to me that you came up with a document and you want us to look it over, but then you're saying also, if you want me to do something different, tell me. I think that you should have the autonomy to set your goals because you know what you can and can't do. I say every year that I've evaluated your goals, my concern is that too many of them are around the budget and you aren't able to reach them. And I just think that that might be setting you up for not meeting them, and that's okay, but it's not if it continues to happen because of the way they're being set. So that's just, I don't know if it's a comment or something. I just,
It's appreciated, and I want to answer to Chris. So again, I don't want to kick the can, but the only way around the committee, because the committee hasn't set goals or talking points, was to talk about start times here right now. So if the committee wants to take that on as a public hearing, which we spoke about a little last night, and get feedback, and then the committee can say, this is an opportunity for us to really dig in, and Jeff and team show us some other things. And it's not contingent upon my goal. So we did speak about this, and again, it's not to that moving, but the committee's going to have to make a decision whether or not you want to move forward with this or not.
Yeah, and I think that's appropriate, and I agree with Hillary. You know, I'd like to see, I mentioned this before, I'd like to see more of Jeff leading than to defer to us to say, what do you think? You know, you're the CEO.
Yeah, this is this document.
Yeah, that's
the start time thing is not.
Yeah, so we hire you to run the district. So
this is this document right here.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Okay, and Fred?
I think that this, in conjunction with other goals or other aspirations, knowing the budget cycle we're going into, is it time for us to identify what we want to accomplish and look at the funding source? We have a good idea of what our budget can increase from the towns on a normal basis. We know what they allot, etc. But there's nothing that prevents us from going to the townspeople and saying, we would like an override so that we can fund this, and that. You know, robotics program, language. You know, the things that we can't fit into that little squeaky increase in the assessment, but are sorely needed. And maybe that's the way we can make headway with things. I'd like to see us, really take a good hard look at, what was it? And granted, it did fail in Whitman by 70-something votes, but a student success budget. That was what we went for, I think it was in 2016. Something along those lines. I think it'd be worth having a good conversation and maybe identifying.
Yeah, we can put that on the agenda or something. Yes, so.
Thanks. Talking about your goals, so I always think of you're going to be evaluated on these at the end of the year. And the question should be, how is our district better, right, at the end of the year? And we also have a new member sitting right next to me, and Glenn was new last year, and we have to complete the evaluation. So I know last spring we talked about the rubric and the evaluation process, and I'm hoping maybe in October we can bring in the rubric that has the indicators and the standards and these fancy words and so forth, and so that it makes the evaluation process easier, perhaps for one of us or all 10 of us. And you would have a good idea too of exactly how you're going to be evaluated on these goals. So that's my ask, if we can include the rubric at the next meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
To bounce that off.
I think we all have a little difficulty with that rubric.
And then, on DESI website and the evaluation, it does talk about choosing, 1 or 2 district goals and a professional practice goal and a student achievement goal. So if we can, use that time at the next meeting to sort of zero in on that with you, if you're able to identify those, that's what I feel like we're here to talk about, not necessarily budgetary pieces.
Right, and I think historically, a lot of goals in this district are tied to the finances.
Yeah.
And I do like, where should we be at the end of the year? This is about student achievement and tying to our strategic plan of helping all kids.
And I think you've nailed it with some of these, because I saw you had the high school win, and that's centered around student achievement. So I think a lot of it's already there. And then really identifying some pieces about, I know some people roll their eyes at the acronym SMART goals, but there's a lot of truth to that, where some of these should be timed, where the benchmarks with, action items that would show it's completed and so forth. So that's what I'm thinking between now and October, so to sort of wrap my head around some of these.
Okay, so we'll vote on them in October, if that's okay?
Sure. Okay, we'll put it on.
Chair, may I just a question back to the MSBA, and we just voted this in the affirmative, but is there still going to be discussion over the funding, the type of debt tied to this, or was that part of that vote we just took?
John will talk about those questions that are in the packet, you guys, once we get to him.
Okay, so there is still another issue. Okay.
I just need a quick handbook vote and a capital vote.
Yeah, let me just talk about the norms.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so the next thing on under Jeff's is our norms, and we keep going to do this, and we keep putting it off. Unfortunately tonight, because we had the long meeting and David is not here, I was first going to, when I thought everybody was going to hear, I was going to suggest, why don't we come up with some norms, we'll stew over them and come back the next time and vote on actual norms. David's not here. We're already getting into 8:20 and we haven't finished. We still have some financial things to go. We have the capital things to discuss. So I would like to put that off until October, when hopefully everybody will be at the meeting, so we can do that once and for all, because it is my goal and I'm kind of losing that goal. So I'd really like to put that forth. But I understand also that the important business that we have today and that we have to get done. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good idea. Something that came up last night we've talked about, and I think we might want to consider it, is meeting more often, maybe twice a month.
Well, years ago they did, or sometimes we did do that,
Well,
or in case of
budget time, but
that did happen before.
Yeah,
I know, when I was on it before. So it could come up in a discussion when we're talking about things that we just said we were going to talk about goals for us too. So that would be something. So with that, you want to go to what you want to next?
So if I can we're looking at capital items. We have a new chair of our capital committee, Mr. Boyce. So would you mind talking to the committee?
Certainly.
The town of Whitman expects our capital project for fiscal 25 October 1st. So we have a submittal for you to vote on today. That being said, the capital committee is flexible because they really don't push this or vote on this until February. So some costs might change. So what you're voting on today is the cost as of today, but those costs might be up or down. When the Whitman Capital votes in February, we will also present this to the capital committee in Hanson, along with Whitman, but I'm not sure of their deadline for capital expenditures. So Mr. Boyce, take it away.
Thank you. So we were presented this evening with capital items, obviously FY25, from both the facilities director and also Brian Lowry, who is standing in for Gideon as the assistant technology director. Gideon could not make it tonight. He has his own school committee meeting. Starting off, what we did was hear from Mike, and the first two items being basically the high school. So it's a 60-40, or someone was saying 61-39,
that's right, people are at right now.
Split. But these are the, one of them is this chiller, the cool chiller compressor for $95,500. That's an original item, so it has not been replaced, and it looks like at the future meetings or something, we may be presented with the other chiller types as well. The second part was the high school fire panel, and it kind of is broken into two, where one is the device migration, $140,000, and the second part is the fire panel migration, which is $88,000. We voted for these. Oh, sorry.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
I'm sorry, there's no chair to recognize. On the high school chiller, we have two. One's with refrigerant, the other's a water-based chiller. Has that failed?
It is getting old, and it's showing signs.
It failed. Is that the one that froze up?
Did it really fail?
Yeah, it failed.
Yeah.
We're on one right now.
I think the other was being just nice.
And
they're running on the other chiller. Exclusive.
No, that's the one that does the...
Can we have George?
Yeah, we're robbing from the existing chiller to sort of make the cool air cool, because we don't have it. Yeah. So.
And I thought it failed, but I just wanted
The
to
hamsters are running
verify.
really fast up on top of it.
The high school fire panel.
Yep.
Has that failed?
The high school fire panel now, well, if you remember, for the last 3 or 4 years, we've talked about the high school fire panel, and it never seems to really get anywhere. So what's happened now is that the fire panel and the migration are at the end of life stage. So we need to replace the smokes, and we no longer have the ability to just replace one of them. You have to replace both of them. And we are now at end of life, and according to Siemens, who we work through, and according to the fire department, they now need to be
So the
replaced.
fire chiefs made the recommendation?
Collectively, yes.
Okay.
We have an issue with distribution of call that sometimes the alarm goes off here, but our EMS are not notified, or there's a delay because of the system right now.
That ain't good.
A 7-minute delay, 8-minute delay. Although the kids have evacuated, nobody's coming.
You're not running off a cell signal, are you?
No, I don't.
Landline connection?
It's still the landline connection that's in the back of the security office. Yeah. The problem was, if my memory serves, and I might be a little off, but the problem was that when the call center left the individual police stations and went to the one in Holbrook, that was really the start of these problems that started to take place because of the lag that went from us to there. The bigger issue, though, we have with the fire panel is that it no longer can clearly identify the problems that we're having in the building causing it. And then what's happened is we tried to do this in 2 phases, replace the panel, because a new panel could still live with the existing smokes and things that we have in the building. We are now at the phase where that's end of life, end of support, and we now need to replace both. So that's what we're bringing forward.
And we voted unanimously on both of these capital items.
Has there been consideration to not using Siemens and using another?
No, and that's come up for many years, especially with the committee that you sit on in Whitman. So we still go with Siemens because that's the proprietary one that we use in this school. So we do use, the district has 2 different companies for their fire panels based on the age of schools, but from talking to the people at Siemens and from talking to our professionals, we are sticking with Siemens.
And will that accept generic, any type of smoke, and do they have to be in a chain? Or will it accept individuals as they need to be replaced in the future?
I do believe that if we do this totally now, because that's where we're at now, because we've talked about this yearly, that by doing this now combined together with everything, we will now be the most up to date. But I'm sure those questions.
If the smoke fails, can just the one smoke be replaced?
Oh, absolutely, yes, the one smoke. But when you said generic, I don't want to.
Is it proprietary to have to be a Siemens smoke?
The panel is proprietary, that I know. The smokes, I would have to get back to you on.
As far as I know, they need to be able to communicate, and Steve, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, they're addressable. There has to be this, most likely the same make.
Right.
Yeah, it has to be able to read that. It's a Siemens product. Some are interchangeable, but if you're starting off fresh,
right,
you don't want to mix and match.
No, I'm talking about for down the line, you have one fail.
Yeah. But Siemens will be the one, do they service it as well?
We always have a package, a separate package for maintenance, and they check it yearly and do those pieces.
Any more questions on that?
Go for tech.
Go for two.
Go for tech.
So the technology portion, the capital requests that Brian Lally spelled out for us was a new core router. Extreme is the brand. Looking at approximately $30,000. And I'm going to have George speak to the E-rate Category 2 budget. Sure. But just in a moment. The second proposal, because we voted these together, was new wireless system. Project would entail the installation and configuration of wireless access points. And that was to the tune of $363, if I wrote that down correctly. But George, tell us about E-rate, please.
Sure. So basically just the core router, for everyone to know, the core router is basically the central hub that all internet traffic comes into the building. And so as Brian Lally described it in our earlier meeting, they're the post office. So everything comes to the post office. The post office then distributes all the mail to where it's supposed to go. So that is a core router. I believe it was 2000. I was in the district. I wasn't in my position the last time we had to replace a core router. But our core router is now out of support, out of life. It's one of those things that we didn't replace at the time during what took place last year because it was still viable. We're at the point now this year that we don't feel it's viable anymore. We'd like to stick with Extreme. Extreme is the company that we use for a lot of our switches. So that is the first piece. The second piece is the replacement of the wireless infrastructure and the replacement of all our wireless access points. Obviously, we know that with more students, with more devices, with more things drawing on the network, it is time to replace that. But what's interesting about it is there's this thing called E-rate. So I'm sure some of you know it, I'm sure some of you don't. I will try to, I'm not an expert, but I'll try to explain it like I was a 7th grade teacher. E-rate is basically a federal fund that came in when the internet was first going into government and municipal buildings. And the government basically says, we will give you X amount of money in order to bring the internet in, and then as everybody had the internet, in order to maintain the internet. So there are two broad categories of E-rate. The first one is to bring in Comcast. So think of your house. Comcast goes from the pole to the building. We use that, and that's what pays our Comcast bill yearly. That's category 1. The second is a group of things that say, once the internet's in your building, we can help you fund all of the things that push the internet out to everyone, which ends up in a Chromebook, you being able to use a Chromebook. So we have had X amount of money in our category 2 E-rate funding to the tune of, right now we have $519,000 in it. What we're asking, or what we would like to do and what we're investigating for the first time is using that $519,000, which is more than what we're asking for here, except there's a caveat. In order to access your E-rate, you have to put the money up front. So when we roughly talk about the tech pieces, I think it was $360 and like $30,000, so let's call it $400,000. We need to come up with $200,000 in order to get the $200,000 from E-rate. So my ask, because we've talked about this, or what we mentioned to the committee at the meeting before is that we would like to have an acceptance of the total cost without E-rate. Hear me out. Knowing that we are working with our consultant who handles our E-rate in order to work on the time that it takes to access the E-rate funds in conjunction with the time that it takes of July 1st if the Capital Committee approves it at town meeting. So basically, you're looking at about $400,000 as a max, with the goal of being able to use those capital funds of $200,000 to access the other 50% from E-rate. If we can do that, then we're really only asking for $200,000 to be split, roughly $200,000 to be split at, I think it's 61 and 39% for both schools. We've never done this before because Gideon, who's running our tech department now, really has a way of communicating with people and adults that maybe we didn't have in that department before this. So that's why we're investigating it through our E-rate people, and now we're bringing it forward. We've never had the money to put up. So we're asking if we can marry those dates, work within both timelines, and go from there. I believe, if memory serves, April is the timeline where you have to access it for this year. So if April's the timeline for E-rate, we wouldn't access it to post July 1st, so we'd go into next year's and you can carry E-rate over. So we'd be able to marry those two dates there, save both towns a considerable amount of money, but we just don't have the money to put up front first.
Thank you. Couldn't say it better myself.
So Steve, we're just looking for a motion to accept.
Can I ask
Yes,
a
that's
quick
right.
question
Sure.
about the extremes? Yeah. License fees. Do you know what each individual, because I know that, at least when it was, before it was extreme, it was Aerohive.
Aerohive it was, yes.
There's like $500-600 per wireless access point.
For the licensing fee.
For the licensing
Yeah, so
fee.
we've used Extreme here many times. Well, we didn't use Aerohive. We used Extreme in the past like 8 to 10 years. We are also soliciting a quote from Ruckus, which is another one. Obviously, this is a big piece, so we'd have to go to Combis and get the 3 quotes. So all of those things will be worked out. However, it's important to know, we cleared this up a couple of years ago, is that when you go to Capital or Capital approves something, that's the highest rate. That's the most amount of money you can spend. And so we usually like to go that because, as John will talk about later, we only charge the town for actual bills and actual money spent, so they don't give us the money up front. But with Extreme, I know there are some licensing fees. I don't have all the particulars.
Because I know you probably include like the first 3 years in the project. Sure. But then it's going to be an ongoing expense.
It would be an ongoing expense from there, but this is to actually do the project, and then that would go into, if my memory serves and if what I think is true, that would then work itself into the LEA budget like it has the rest of the time.
Dawn?
Are there any items for the middle school? I see just high school. Did I miss that in the conversation? Middle or elementary?
This is all district-wide.
Okay.
So
For technology, it's all district.
Okay, and then the 2 high school items.
Our high school specific at this point in
facility,
time.
high school.
So are we saying right now we have no middle school needs or maintenance requests, capital?
Not at this point.
and
At this
no
point in time, no. Now, yeah, I'd like to caution you, because that's a great point you bring up, Don. We weren't going to do the paving at the high school, but then 2 years ago, but then we had that massive winter where everything cracked.
Yeah.
So this is what happens when we start in October. There were some changes that we had to make, but as of right now, this is what we're putting forward.
So I think my last follow-up is, will we also, because we have a full capital matrix, right, of
It's being updated.
needs, not wants, and will that be submitted to both towns along with that?
Yes.
Because I recall some conversations around, oh, this is all the district has for capital, and let's decide amongst this what a priority is. But at this time, administration has decided these are the priorities.
Correct.
Based on that full capital matrix.
Correct.
Okay.
And last year, that's a great question, that's a great update again, because last year, we did submit each town's capital matrix with them, and then we made the priorities off of that to bring to this committee, and then bring forward to both capital committees of both towns.
Okay.
So we need a vote.
Motion.
We need a motion.
Motion to accept.
I'll motion to accept.
I'll motion to accept the needs of the, submitted by the Operations and Capital Subcommittee.
Chris seconded
Chris seconded.
already.
Chris seconded. So, all in favor? Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one last vote from me. In June, Dr. Jones presented some changes to the handbook. They were reading items. We never received any comment on those reading items. To make it official, I need a vote of accepting those changes for the high school handbook as presented in June 1st, 2023.
So moved?
Second.
Any questions?
No, I'm voting. Pre-voting.
I don't
Pre-voting?
recall exactly what they were, but
That's in your packet there.
yeah, didn't have a chance to.
Okay, let's go to vote. All in favor? Nine? One abstention?
I'm going to abstain.
Abstain?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
9 and 1 abstain.
Mr. Stanbrook, you're on. Please. Yeah, so one of the questions came about regional transportation update. We were disappointed that we came in low at 79.5%. We were expecting and have gotten a higher percentage in the past. So I had a very good conversation with Josh Cutler the day that Rep. Sullivan Almeida was being induced to have her baby. So she couldn't join us on the phone call, but she's let her support. Josh said that regional transportation was level funded over the past 3 years, which we saw high amount year one, medium amount year two. We saw this amount of percentage this year. In the governor's budget of 2024, fiscal 24, they've updated that figure. I think they infused $2-point-something million into regional transportation. So he said we should project somewhere between 85 and a 90% reimbursable this coming year. I said, my committee's upset at 79%. He goes, well, it's been level funded, and we haven't changed that, but the committee should be happy about the number that we will get for reimbursement in fiscal 24. So that's the short answer. They weren't going to move on. Yeah, that's.
But it wasn't level funded.
That's what I got from Josh. You're familiar with Josh.
It's time to go dig out the votes in the budget because it wasn't level funded.
So he said the amount was there, and that's where we're at. That was increased for this budget as approved by the governor in early August, and that's where we stand. So, John, jump in.
Okay. The next one on the agenda is state aid. So this is something that we've been doing almost every meeting, and this is the final one for.
Excuse me, John.
Sorry.
Could you help us refer to which document you're going over?
It should be. It's.
Is it?
I actually labeled it whatever it was on the agenda, so I think it was 4.
H-Doc 1.
H2. If you have the paper and it looks like this. It says General Fund Cherry Sheet Comparison for the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District.
It's just a single page.
It's just one page.
Oh, that's not it.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so that's Stock 1.
Doc 1. You're upside down. I'm sorry.
All set, John. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this is just a final update. We've been going through the state budget. The top portion of this sheet is the cherry sheet aid, which is the state aid from the FY23 to FY24. It's a comparison. Revenues were up $620,000 over last year for us, or are budgeted to be up $825, or 2.35%. Assessments are also up by $308,444. So the total cherry sheet aid that we're scheduled to receive is a $312,381 increase over last year, or 1.25%. That's the top part. The second part is a comparison between what was voted at the budget and what we finally ended up getting from the state. And that is negative $21,799 on the cherry sheet revenue, and then we had an additional cherry sheet assessment of $220,000 over what was voted, and the total cherry sheet aid, if we the budget is down $242,391, which is almost the entire amount of regional transportation. So the two things happened on regional transportation: we over budgeted actual costs, and I don't know the way it works with this is the fiscal year 23's overall costs will be reimbursed in fiscal year 24, the one we're in now, at the percentage the Commonwealth decides to give us. They 79.5 last year, hopefully 90 or something higher this year. I don't know the fiscal year 23 ending costs yet. I will know it probably by our next meeting. I don't know it yet, and I'll see how much that, the regional transportation amount that was voted would be higher than it should be. And it's something that, again, we worked on the budget subcommittee meeting, was that last week? I think it was last week.
Last week, yes.
Thank you. And we talked about that, and it might be worth it to think conservatively on that number in the future, given the way the numbers have been going in the last couple of years. And then down below, the state budget process, these were the dates. Again, the governor's budget came out on March 1st this year. These are all the dates where all the other budgets came out. Again, we voted on May 1st, the town meeting voted on May 1st, if I remember right, both towns. So we used the governor's budget, I believe, and then I don't think we changed it. We stayed with the governor's budget. So the state finally passed the budget on August 9th. So that's kind of where we are. No, it wasn't passed. Okay.
Thanks, John.
I was going to ask you on the... Sorry, under general fund assessments, the charter school sending tuition. So, yeah, it looks like we were expecting to have a cost of $1,190,000 for charter school sending. Is that right?
That was what was voted, yes.
FY24 voted budget amount, so that means, our budget, we voted. And the tuition cost is actually going to be $1,352,000.
Yes.
So it's $162,000 more than we anticipated for charter school sending.
Yes, we took the governor's budget, and that had 1,190,314 in it. The final budget as voted as 1,352,883 in it.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying it's tough when it's you think it's going to cost 1.1 million and it costs 1.3 million.
So being skeptical sometimes in central office, and we applaud the fact that we get $60 per pupil, right, instead of 30.
Yeah.
And then our charter school tuition went up $100,000. So the benefit that we got from the 30 went away. So that's just us being skeptical sometimes, that it's a shell game on Beacon Hill when they move monies around. We think we got something, and we applauded that, and then costs went up, or expenses went up.
Or I wonder, did we have more kids going to charter?
I think our charter school has been stable. Its costs just going. It's not, we've had an
it stays steady.
Stays pretty civil. It's pretty sustainable, yeah.
Okay.
That
It's
hasn't
just
jumped around, no.
We're being
They
billed.
changed the rubric for the
Thank you.
Oh, they're shaking your hand. Look, we're going to give you more money, and someone else is there in your back pocket. Can I ask a quick question, Madam Chair?
Sure.
Through you to John. Is it possible to get the end-of-year report when you submit?
Yes.
Since that could be distributed to the committee, I think that would give us some interesting reading.
Yeah, okay. It's a big document, but yeah.
Is that the end of October?
Yes.
Would hope so.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, good. All right, next is capital projects, I believe, on the capital project status update. So there are two documents. They look like this, if you've got them on paper. If not, they should be labeled whatever they are on the agenda in the drive. They're the same in the sense that the amounts are on the same, but they're sorted in two different ways. One is by fund number and one is by town. So these are all the capital projects that were outstanding as of 9/7, so it was last week. So I like to use the one sorted by fund number. As you know, we had a collapse of our computer, our accounting system, so I had to go back and recreate all of these, so it's taken a while. But what I did was I tried to group things in like things together, and also to put votes in so that everyone can look up what the vote was, when, and what it was for. So that took a while, and this is the product of that work. So if you're looking at the one that says sorted by fund number, there's a red line down the middle. If you look to the left of the line, that is what was in the article when it was voted, what we've billed so far over the course of the article's life, and then what's remaining to be billed or could be used. So the ending balance of available funds. Again, this is not I think we talked about it last time or 2 meetings ago. We don't have this money. This is all in the town's on the town's books, and we spend the money. We ask for reimbursement, and the towns give us the money that we ask for. So to the left of the red line are all the page 1 and page 2. Those are all the capital projects broken down by what type of project it was. Again, the color code things are more for me, but you can take a look at what each color code means. And then to the right of the red line is the cash in the account. So, for example, I'm looking at the sorted by fund number 1, and the top number is 3,000 sidewalk repairs, which was Article 20. This is Whitman Multi-School Capital Projects sidewalk repairs. That was 2020's annual town meeting. That's what ATM means. STM is the special town meeting. Number 25. That had a beginning balance of $2,894.91, and the negative is because Whitman had not paid that amount as of 7/1/22. They have paid that amount, and they also were billed more during the year of 23. They come up with the $12,000. We also spent an additional $9,589 on that. So the current balance, cash account, actual cash, is 0. We spent the money, we asked for reimbursement, Whitman gave us the money, and that's why it's 0. If you're looking in the current balance column and you see negative amounts, those are amounts that have been billed but haven't been reimbursed yet. I can keep going all day, but I know it's late. So that's kind of the first page and the second page. If you look down the bottom, again, I like the one sorted by fund number, but you might like to use the one that's sorted by town. It's a little bit different. But if you're using the one sorted by fund number, the capital project articles that are outstanding as of last week is $340,451.81, and I'm getting that in the current balance column under the line that says grand total all capital projects articles. So that's that part of it. And then the next part of it on page 3 is what I've actually billed in fiscal year 23 and where I billed them. So if you look at on May 26th, I billed all of those amounts to both Whitman and Hanson, and then there's a status next to it. We have received them, and the date we received it. So it's good to remember that if there's a negative amount in the current balance as on September 30th, we're going to lose excess and deficiency for that amount of money. That's a deficit that has to come out of excesses and deficiency. So if we look at the billing, Whitman has paid back every single, has nothing outstanding. Everything that I've billed them, they paid it back. It's a great job by Town Administrator Mary Beth Cotter and Ken Lytle, the Treasurer Collector, and Karen Clancy, their new town accountant. They did a fantastic job. They've been working with me. Hanson is doing a great job too with Lisa Green, and I think it's their acting town accountant, Eric Kinshirf. The ones that are highlighted are the ones that have not been paid, and they are all Hanson at the moment. Indian Head phone replacement of $22,000, HMS phone replacement, HMS is Hanson Middle School, $17,000. Again, I feel that Hanson will be able to get this money to us before September 30th. They understand what's going on. So that's what's happened there. And then finally on the last
John,
page.
hold on.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think you said it. So all the money that is owed needs to be paid by September 30th, or we have to take it out of our E&D and pay it. So then if the town pays us pays the district after, on October 5th, does that then go into our E&D? What happens to that money?
It just won't be, if you remember last year, we had a Whitman mold issue, and it was, again, I'm trying to remember the number, it's late. But it was $53,393.06, I think, or something like that. If that
Something like that. I don't remember the number, but I remember
it's on here, I
exactly.
think.
I think we all remember that.
That was one from the previous year. They ended up giving us that money this year, and I billed it because they had appropriated the money. That's a deficit. So if the deficit just stays there, then it'll continue to come off E&D until it gets funded somehow. If they pay it later, they pay it October 5th, it will come off our 2023 E&D, but it won't 2024.
Okay. So then there's not really, I'm looking at this one, it's 3056. It looks like, if I'm reading the coding correctly, it was approved at the special town meeting in '22.
Yes.
Right? So now we're a year later, essentially, right? We're almost at our special meeting. So is there like just a handshake time frame, or is it the October 30th time frame? Like, this money's been appropriated, correct?
Yes.
So is it just like a clerical, like things are just kind of taking a while to get paid? I'm trying to understand why we're a year out and we still don't have that money, and now it's going to come out of our E&D.
So pre-breach, I would bill this every quarter.
Okay.
I was not able to do this, as you might guess, it takes a little bit of time to do this. So I wasn't able to do it until after town meeting.
Okay.
So I started then, and then we've had other things that have come up, and I've been able to work on it. So in a not a perfect world, but a better world, I'll bill these timely, and we'll get them going so that this won't happen.
Okay.
This is just a one-time off thing, I hope.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks. Makes sense.
So then the last page is, I know we talked about with capital projects, amounts that we could turn back. That means that we had money that was allocated for certain projects, and either we're not doing the projects or we've completed the projects, and that money can be turned back to the town, both towns, and then they can use that as a funding source for whichever the way they want. If they don't want to do anything, they can just leave it there, and then it will go into their free cash, the town's free cash, or they could use it to fund other things at town meeting. Town meeting can use that as a funding source. So if you look on page 4, again, of the fund number 1, the gray amounts are what has been turned back to Whitman to date, and you see there's an amount column, a release column, a corrected column. The release of the amounts, the corrected column is we thought that there were money left over, but there wasn't. So as we're going, I'm correcting things. So Whitman has turned back 137. I have turned back to the town of Whitman 137,057.37 and then once Hanson paid, the phone system is completed. I think we talked about that before. Once Hanson pays the phone system, I can return that money back too. That's an additional $30,000. So for a total of $167,000 that could go back to Whitman. And then on the last page is Hanson, $115,708.22 went back to Hanson. It's been closed. They can use that money at the upcoming town meeting if they choose to. And again, most of them have been released, and there was one correction there on Indian Head School Street parking. And so that $115,708.22. So the total capital projects that have been turned back to both towns, or could be turned back, is $283,357. That's the last page there. So I'm trying to move quickly because I know it's late. So that's my attempt at trying to wrangle the capital projects.
Thank you, John, because we had asked about that and, trying to get this, money paid to us or, bills paid to us or releasing the money. So good job.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, John.
And then the last thing was the Whitman Middle School debt borrowing overview. The cliche is the 30,000-foot view. This is more like the space shuttle view of how to do debt borrowing. I just wanted to put down some questions, and they don't need to be answered tonight or even debated if you don't want to. But this is the type of thing, these are the things you have to start to think about. Let's be, when it gets passed by town meeting. I'm not going to say.
Thank you for saying that, John.
So, again, very simple, very basic things like what amounts do we need to borrow? What type of borrowing will we do? So, and then there's a level principal type of borrowing, there's a level payment type of borrowing, and then there's things called call provisions. Will we break up the borrowing into smaller portions or large portions? There's pros and cons to that stuff of doing one thing or another. Again, I'm skimming down here, but when will we do the borrowing? You can't borrow everything up front. There's an arbitrage penalties and rebates from the IRS that we can go into later, but we want to make sure that we eliminate any E&D things. Make sure we have money in place before September 30th so we don't lose E&D because any deficit in this account that we don't have money borrowed for would go off at E&D. So we have to time the spending to match the borrowing as while minimizing interest costs. Will we use short-term borrowing or long-term borrowing? Short-term borrowing or bond anticipation notes or bands. They both have pros and cons, and it depends on which way you want to go with interest rates. You think interest rates will go. I don't know when interest rates are going to go. 2027, when we're going to be thinking about this, if and when it passes, I don't know what's going to happen in 2027. No one does. If I knew that, I'd be in Manhattan. I wouldn't be here. So we can just make assumptions, and we go with the assumptions based on what we think might happen. What will be the interest rate environment and what the tax impact on Whitman taxpayers will change based on the above decisions, obviously. In 2027, depending on what we do here, that has the tax impact on the tax rate in town. And who will make these borrowing decisions? Again, is it, I don't know, is it the school committee? Is it the town of Whitman? Is it the superintendent? Who is it? Is it the building committee?
Fred had a question? Yep.
Actually, it's perfect timing because it pertains to number 8. We'll make the decisions. I don't think that whereas the Whitman taxpayer would be paying the bill, I would think that it would be the town of Whitman, i.e. the Board of Selectmen and town administrator, in conjunction with. But those would be the folks that would make the decision on what type of borrowing to go forward with, where it's coming from the town of Whitman, so to speak. That I would strenuously argue that that's the way it should be set up.
I agree. Okay. So who would decide that is what I'm saying, I guess.
Well, the district is the one that's borrowing.
Right.
Okay, the decision of how to borrow, what terms and conditions, because there's a couple of different methods of how they borrow. Setting up the bands, for the short-term borrowing, or do they want to, say, hey, we're rolling the dice that this is going to be the best rate we're going to get. Let's do it all now and draw down on it. I think that's an option. But that should be investigated and done by the town of Whitman in conjunction with Mr. Stanbrook.
And our bond council, I would think, too.
Well, our bond council, that's who the bond's going to go through.
Right, so, I mean, that's important, too.
Which happens to be the same as Whitman's. And it's Lockland Wood, so, I mean, it's the same firm, so that sort of makes it easy.
That's kind of a positive thing.
I'll go as far if you'd like to entertain a motion that the borrowing decisions get made by the town of Whitman in conjunction with the business office at the regional school district.
Okay, before you make that motion, though, do you think we should do this with the building committee first and then come back here?
I don't know that that's a building committee decision as to how the project gets paid for in that manner.
Steve?
You've got the benefit of Mary Beth, who obviously did the high school there. I think even looking back, she picked up on some remarkable things. So I know she's town administrator now, but I think with John, and as Fred said, with the town itself, Mary Beth, not necessarily heading it up, but obviously representing the board, and then we have Ken and Ken's the treasurer. Who's the town accountant?
Clancy, I think Ms. Clancy.
Mary Beth?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
Well,
Karen Clancy.
whoever needs to be involved there. I mean, I think you got a wealth of talent right there. But I do recall Beth doing a lot, Mary Beth rather, doing a lot of...
Okay, Chris?
I don't know if we're just kind of going in circles here. It seems like it's a pretty obvious thing that we would work in conjunction with the town and John to do this. And particularly because if we have the same bond council, that kind of streamlines the process. So I can't imagine us saying Whitman's not going to be involved, or I can't imagine Whitman saying we don't want to talk to the school district. It seems like it's an organic kind of situation that is going to happen anyway.
The only thing I could imagine is if there was one feeling of level payment and another feeling of level principal, the town would want to be able to dictate, I would think, the method.
I just don't know how we have to...
Because they're the ones paying the bill ultimately.
One at a time, guys.
Sure, sorry.
One at a time. Dawn, you're next.
Doesn't the decision lie with us, ultimately, the school district? Because I think Mr. Boyce had mentioned to me once that the Whitman-Hanson School Committee decided the high school, that it was... Anyhow, I think I'm happy to, include the town of Whitman. I just want to be sure that, number 8 says who will make these decisions. We can, as a school committee, right, if we choose to have Whitman do it. Do you know when this decision has to be made?
The timeline that I saw was, if it passes, and when it passes, is February of 27 is when the construction is starting, if I remember right.
No, but I find that odd because we're voting on something, so a final number has to be given to the taxpayers.
No.
Not really. No, it doesn't.
Okay.
If it's just the DPW, it didn't either. So, yeah.
Well, I guess with a building project, that's always the thing, right? How much are my taxes going to go up if I vote yes or no? And
they can give a general idea. That's it.
A snapshot.
Okay, well, right, a snapshot with parameters. Here's the amount, here's the projected term, and whether it's going to be borrowed at level principal or level debt. And those two payments are very different. And it's important to talk about those two different payments because Mary Beth Carter even quoted them and they were in the newspaper.
But there were different differences of opinions of what they were, too.
So a level principal that was quoted was $1,494 a year. $1,494, and level debt is $1,017. Different of $477 a year. And that's whoever's going to make this decision is going to make the decision on how to borrow it. So if you're a homeowner and you have a 30-year mortgage, I'd bet you a pizza at, the local pizza shop that you have level debt. That's the same mortgage payment from day 1 to day 360 on a 30-year. It's level, it's consistent, it's what you know you can expect. And the level principal with the higher amount, you're paying more interest up front and then it declines over the time. So it's all on how we want to present this project and present the cost to the taxpayers. And for some, it may be more comfortable to have a tax increase of $1,017 every year. And that would share the tax sort of interest throughout the term among all homeowners and those people who move in. In 20 years, they wouldn't have a lower tax rate. They'd be paying the same as we all would from day 1 to the end. So that's the information that I had, and I'm just wondering, whether we can weigh in on that, or we want to certainly, go ahead with the vote to have Whitman Town make that decision.
So I'm going to piggyback on Mr. Scriven saying a little bit about the CEO piece of it right now. This is 9:06, and we're talking about something that we don't have to do tomorrow. Exactly. I would love to get more information that we could present to the committee, because this does lie with the committee. the debt that we'll take on. I know Whitman's going to pay for it, just like Hanson would pay for a new project as well. But I don't feel I have enough information to give the committee with timeline when this has to get done, and vetting out those two costs that, John, that you just made mention of, because there is some differences. There are alternative funding sources, too, that we've brought up at the building committee option. So I would be hesitant to make a vote tonight. I think we can make that vote, and I want to team up with Whitman. But I think, again, we look at the time, making decisions after a 2.5-hour meeting, sometimes without conversation and rush through. That was something that came up in our policy meeting the other day. So I would just ask, there's no motion on the table right now, but consider what I just said.
And, looking at it, for instance, if you're making the same payment, I think it was called the cost of doing that is an additional $19 million over the course of the project. Also keeping in mind, and these are factors that should come from the town of Whitman, what are we looking at 10 years or 15 years from now for other projects or other needs? We've got 2 older schools. There's a lot to be said, but I think that where Whitman is writing the check every year to the school district for whatever the payment is, Whitman should be making the decision.
Well,
and, in conjunction with John.
Yeah, I don't think I'm comfortable tonight making this vote. I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I would like some more information. I'd like to find out when this needs to be. And because George brought up different funding sources, and nobody really wanted to listen to him. He had some different ideas that could save a lot of money using free cash. Somehow how they did it with the police station and stuff. And so that, maybe, there's other ways to look at things. And I just think, we need to have some more information here, and we do have another meeting before the town meeting, and, usually when we try to convince the people, we tell them it's going to be about this much on your taxes, no matter which way you do it, okay? And that's how you do it. But the amount is going to be there, the full borrowing amount, which will scare everybody, because that's what they'll look at, the 135, or if it goes down to 130, but...
Madam Chair, we really, until there's money needed for a project, we don't have to make a decision.
Right, so I would rather not tonight.
Steve? Just a quick thing. It's going to cost me $3.83 a day, starting with the first year. So there's no more cat treats.
Okay.
There won't be any purchase.
That's good to know, Dean.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay, so...
Thanks, we're good.
So I think we're good on this, and we'll wait. We have some good questions here. If you want, we can follow up with some of these and find out more information, but hopefully that we'll just hold off on that. Okay. What is next?
So new business, I just said we can't vote on something heavy, but I need a delegate for the MASC conference, that whoever's going is Tuesday the 7th through Friday the 10th, I believe. I just went on their website and it's down, but I don't know who is going to go from the committee, but the committee always has a delegate to vote. We don't have what is the voting items yet. That should come in October.
Do we know what night the vote is? That, because it used to be the last... I was last year, and it was the first...
It's usually Saturday morning.
No, it wasn't. It was the first day or the second.
Wednesday.
Oh,
It was Wednesday.
Wednesday or Thursday.
So
Yeah, it was.
You always have it on Saturday morning so they could keep you there.
Right,
But
they didn't do it last year.
There is no Saturday this year because of Veterans Day. So they moved the conference from Tuesday to Friday.
But last year it wasn't Saturday.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, the year before.
So who's planning on attending? Anyone?
Is anybody planning on attending?
I'm a maybe. I want to
I'm
look
not
at...
sure either.
I have no vacation time left at work, so.
So do I want to get a delegate vote in October? Because we are meeting October 11th, and I need to have this by the 20th. So people, if you're interested in going, I need a delegate. We don't have to send a delegate. It's not mandatory. But if someone's there and want to be the delegate to vote on action items from the MASC.
It's not a real long meeting. It's good discussion. So if anybody's interested, the conference itself is very good, very informative. A lot of good topics are discussed. So, if anybody's interested, that you do get, you do get to go and reimbursed for your meals and for your hotel, from the school committee, so.
I'll send out specific dates tomorrow.
Hopefully somebody will go.
Next, quick, I think, is declaring surplus books. George?
We have the list in our packet.
Yep.
Yeah, you have a list in your packet from Bob Davidson, who's the history department chair. We purchased new books from the history department, and these are just really aged out. So we look for that. And then also, it didn't make it into your packet, but if I could, it's very, very short, if I could just read, if I could, Madam Chair.
Yeah, sure.
Teresa Scott, who's the science coordinator for grades 6 to 12. She said, Mr. Farrow, I would like to request that the books listed below be declared surplus and removed from the Hanson Middle School, classroom 211. They're outdated science books, no longer in use, and taking up storage space. And there are basically two types. There's 25 copies of a book called Earth Science from 1987, and there's 105 copies of the Science Voyages book. These are out of date because we are now online with those, and in 1987, most of the things we have in the world have changed anyway. So I'd ask that you take...
Like our social studies books.
Yeah, I'd ask that you take the social studies one from Bob Davidson and the science one from Teresa Scott, if I could so
Motion to declare surplus the request from Mr. Davidson and the request as read by Mr. Farrow.
Second.
Okay. George, one question. What happens to these surplus books? Do they just get thrown away, or they get donated?
At this point in time, they just get thrown away because we have an issue with, especially in both of these cases, that the presented material is no longer sort of relevant in most cases, and we used to try to donate them to somewhere else.
I remember
but
that. Yeah.
Those things don't work anymore because it's incumbent upon the person who wants to donate them to pay for all the freight, and books are heavy.
Yeah. It costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion. So can I have a vote, please? All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you. We have 2 field trips, girls field hockey. Looking to go to Martha's Vineyard on October 12th as an open.
Motion to accept as presented in our packets.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous?
Mr. Davidson, again, in global travel, is looking to go to Italy. Where are they going?
Italy.
Right? Italy.
Only if I can go.
April 12th to April 20th. Again, this is all student funded. There's no cost to the district. We've gone globally for years and years and years. This is a great trip.
Motion to accept as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? I was going to say no unless I could vote.
Now you're just into subcommittees.
Okay, subcommittee, policy subcommittee report.
Thank you, Hillary, for taking the notes and sharing them so I don't miss anything. Here we go. Yes, we met last night and had members of the community attend and participate in our public comment on the subject of public comment. And we had a very spirited debate, I'd say, in a very positive way. We would try to be as creative as we could be because we want to make sure that we're communicating to the public that we want as much engagement as possible. And I'll just go over some of the highlights that we discussed. As suggestions, we suggested adding a comment period at the end of the meeting, having a ledger of people that must sign in 20 minutes before the meeting if they wish to speak with their name and topic. This way we can see if we need to table a vote on something or hold a public hearing. Another suggestion that we had. If there's enough interest in the community, they come, to the meeting and want to speak on a subject, and we see that there's a large contingent, we may consider scheduling a public hearing on the issue, as to not bog down our committee meetings, and but as a response to a large number of people that think something worthy of our consideration. And
Chris, may I?
Sure.
Would the benefit of
deciding to then hold a public hearing be an opportunity where the committee or the superintendent even could weigh in, rather than if, 5 or 6 people came and all gave a comment and we know we're not supposed to respond, right? So is that why something like
I think
that
that's
would
the
benefit?
nature of a public hearing, right?
That's hearing. Right, that's why you would.
Exactly it.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to talk this through.
Yeah.
Like, that would be good, because then we could engage with the people rather than say, thanks, and you're out the door, and now we've just
Right.
had, okay.
So we did have some differing opinions on how to approach this initially, but I think we, like I said, really tried to be creative in coming up with ways that we could support people's interest in participating in our meetings. And, we talked about, I don't know if did we put this on here, Hillary, where we said on every posting of our agenda would have something that, well, actually a policy on public comment rather, so that it kind of gave people different avenues to participate. I got that right, Michelle? Is that how we said that?
We're going to still have it in the beginning, but we're no longer going to interrupt our meeting during the meeting. We're not going to let anyone line up at the podium and stop our meeting and let them speak during the meeting at all.
One of the things we did say, though, not at all, we said we'd like to leave it up to the chair.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I definitely misspoke there. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If in fact the chair deems warranted at the time, she can certainly decide. But for the most part, the general rule would be we will get through our meeting and have our discussions and our thoughtful discussions that we need to get through, and then someone is welcome to speak at the end.
Can I just I'm sorry. I just wanted to, so one of the things, so there were some really interesting things that came out of our policy sub meeting. So one of the things about that I think we all need to understand is if the chair were to allow someone to speak, 2 people to speak for 10 minutes after an agenda item, we would have to grant 10 minutes after every single agenda item for equity. And it's 9:20 right now, and we just had a regular public comment tonight. So that was something that we talked about.
You didn't mean every agenda item, you mean at the end of the meeting?
No, after every agenda item. So for equity,
that was discussed.
yes, that's part of that. And then the other piece is the Supreme Court case where we've all sat in meetings where people have yelled and pointed and said things, and they're allowed to do that. So people of the Supreme Court ruled this summer that people can stand up at the podium and call us any name that we want, and we can't do anything.
Not that we
I'm
want.
sorry. I'm sorry. It's late. Any name that they want, and we have to take it. And they are within their First Amendment rights. And so that Supreme Court case is, that was something we talked about decorum and about civility. And, we want to give people the opportunity to participate in our meetings, but we need to be careful. We've all sat through meetings where things have kind of gotten heated. And so that case was part of why we talked about the things we talked about.
Yep. And as I mentioned last night, I think we're capable of policing our meetings, and still engaging with the public. That's my feeling, personally. So again, we have some differing opinions, but we tried to come up with creative ways to inform the public on how they can participate. And the next item was to say that any citizen can ask to be placed on the agenda to present something in advance of our meetings, right? That's a standing policy we have, right? Mm-hmm. So that's another way that they can, speak substantively on something. We did mention this, taking speakers in order, parents, guardians, citizens, anyone else. Hillary pointed out they don't have to be a resident to speak, and that's been happening here and there, and it's become problematic. So we have to be cognizant of that as well.
They don't have to be, they're allowed to speak.
Correct. I was surprised to hear that.
It's a public meeting.
Town meeting is the only meeting that you have to be a resident to speak at.
Okay.
So.
Right.
Was there any consideration to allowing people to speak after the school committee has debated a topic? If they want to come up to the podium, state their name and address, and I guess the town that they live in, with a time limit of, say, 60 seconds or, 2 minutes.
That's what she was just talking about.
Yeah, no, we're not doing that. We're only speaking.
No,
I'm
at the
sorry.
end of the meeting, not at the end of the...
Beginning and end.
Correct. At any portion, we are discussing an agenda item, somebody has a viewpoint to share.
No.
So if it was an original talking point, and there was a time limit placed on it, it's my personal belief that the public should be able to weigh in.
Okay, guys, this policy isn't done yet.
I thought he was asking, I thought he was asking the policy chair what happened.
Yeah, I know, I'm just saying, everybody's trying to raise their hand and everything, so go ahead.
No, I'm just asking if there was
I
consideration.
just want to clarify that we had a discussion, Fred, about having public comment at the beginning and the end of our meetings, not after a particular agenda item was discussed, but allotted time for people to come and speak at the beginning of our meetings for something that's maybe not even on the agenda. And then at the end of the meeting, they have another chance to weigh in, even though it's maybe after a vote or something like that. So those are the things we've
My personal concern is at times someone might have some pertinent information to share before we make a vote that might be something we hadn't considered.
We discussed that. That was, yeah.
And that's why we talked about,
I will speak to your point. We discussed at length last night, the agenda is out there, so a lot of times when you just said we're speaking about something on the agenda and someone might want to come up and speak, they are welcome to speak beforehand about what's on the agenda and add their opinion before. So it doesn't have to, they don't have to, I'm speaking. They don't need to come up and speak after we've discussed it because they can see that it's on the agenda and they're welcome to share their thoughts then. So they're not being silenced, Fred. They're welcome to come up and speak before about what's on the agenda.
And not only that, but...
So,
I'm sorry, Michelle. One of the suggestions was to get back to our previous policy of posting the packet along with when the meeting's posted, right? And so give people a chance to really, because part of the concern was they come to the meetings, they don't really know what's going to be discussed, so they can't really speak intelligently on the item before it happens, right?
Okay.
That makes sense.
Glenn wants to speak.
I do. It's been I know. It's just been. Okay. In my opinion, when it would be most productive to hear people speak would be anything that we were voting on. So if we're coming up to a vote, that's when I'd like to hear what the people have to say, because the vote's the only thing that matters here. All this talking back and forth that we do, in the end, it don't matter until we vote. So I don't know, like, you can let people come up and get whatever they have off their chest, but if it doesn't lead to anything, we're just here, listen to people vent. It's the votes that matter.
but that's what public comment is, right? Like the
Come up
public
and vent,
comment
I get it.
is both of those things.
I think that's the...
I think tonight we saw a really good example of public comment working in the way it's supposed to. We had
Because we were voting.
Right, and so
I like that.
And we talked about noting in our agendas when we're going to take votes, so that when people come at the beginning of a meeting, they know we're going to vote on something,
But the time
and so
that
they
we
can speak
didn't
to it.
hear it was the crosswalk.
My thought is
Those
that
people I would have loved
no,
to
we had
heard.
public comment at that meeting. We had public
Before.
comment. Yep, and that's when it
No,
was,
but
and
not,
that's our policy.
I get it, but
But
not...
that's when it was, and that's our policy. So
Okay.
it's disingenuous and wrong and not factual to say we didn't have public comment.
We did have public comment, but I don't think they understood
No,
what...
and we talked about
I
that
thought
last
they
night,
thought they were going to be able to speak.
who were there,
And I clarified.
And we
Okay,
did, and
that's
Chair,
why
I
they didn't
clarified.
speak,
And
because
we
they
said-
thought they were
right.
going to be able to speak.
And we talked last night about how our policy wasn't being followed. So I think one of the big things that we talked about last night too was on our agendas. Sean Kane suggested, going out to the PTOs and saying, here's how the public, if we change our public comment policy, right? Because we just had a brainstorming session last night. Nothing has changed.
Right.
If we change it, we need to then educate the public.
Of course, yes.
Right? And that's part of our job to educate them on all kinds of things.
Can that be put on the posted agenda?
Yeah,
Public
that's what we
comment will
talked
be
about. Here's public comment, here's our policy.
Sure.
We talked about going to the PTOs so that younger parents
isn't
and
done yet.
families.
I get it.
Right.
I know.
So that's kind of the nature of it.
Fred, this last, and then we're going to go on. Guys, it's
Two
getting late.
things. And I want to separate something from public comment to perhaps calling it public deliberation, where we're talking about a specific item. Yes, it's on the agenda, but the ebb and flow of the conversation and the talking points that are made, if somebody has something that can educate us in that discussion, that's what I would like to hear someone coming up to the podium. There's no way they can know prior to make a public comment to be able to come up and educate us if we're voting on something. And if they have a good point, whether it's through life experience, etc., I feel that the public should be allowed to have their input on it.
That's one of the things we discussed, Fred, and we try to, if we go if we go in that direction exclusively, with this concern that, there's a lot of concerns with that, actually.
Yeah.
So what we tried to do is come up with all the different ways the public could actually contribute and to help facilitate that, right? Particularly when they get the packet and they're informed before they come to the meeting, as opposed to speaking publicly at the beginning, having us deliberate, and you sit there and go, like Glenn said, I missed that opportunity, So that's what we're trying to do, have them come to the meeting informed, then make their statement before our meetings, then we deliberate as a committee, because I know Beth's comment in the past, this is a school committee, right? So I understand that, I respect that. So we're trying to be as creative as we can to encourage engagement.
Okay, so, no, I'm going to use my chair, and we're done, because this has not been voted on, it has not been presented to us, it was just saying that.
Next steps.
So, next steps.
Next steps. So the policy subcommittee is meeting again to form a policy for you, for a read, that you will have comment on.
Right.
And then we will bring it back to the policy subcommittee to redo or take those considerations and then vote.
Okay.
So that's where we're at, and it was a good brainstorming session, and we'll provide you with.
So that.
I'll try and make your next meeting, and I do thank you. Perhaps it's a disadvantage because I'm asking questions about what occurred when I should have been there. I couldn't be there last
I don't
night.
think that's your responsibility to get to all public subcommittee meetings like it.
No, but it's something of great
guys,
interest to me.
Can we
so.
go on, please? We're going to go on.
Please.
So the next is operations and capital, which we already
Can I
done.
just speak quickly? Obviously, first we reorganized, you voted, and thank you for the capital projects so far for FY25. We did talk about opening of schools, the new boards that are in. I got Perithium on my mind, but I know it's not that. And then we're hoping that with a special town meeting in Hanson, is maybe by late October, being able to get the boards for the Hanson schools and getting them installed probably in November. Late October, November. We did talk about I only asked about how the humidity was, and obviously there were concerns about, every school was fine, but the middle school in Whitman, slippery floors and so forth. And then our next meeting tentatively scheduled for November 15th, and we meet at 5:30 right here in the library.
Okay, so Regional Agreement Committee.
So we will be reopening the Regional Agreement Committee Monday, the September 25th at 5:45. I'm still looking for a select person from Hanson to serve on the committee, but we are reforming that committee. Our first meeting is on the 25th.
Can I ask just a question? If we don't have a select board member from Hanson on that committee, does that mean that we can't do committee work?
We right now, the way it was set up was with 4 voting members, a school committee person from Whitman and select person from Whitman, school committee person from Hanson, select person from Hanson. So I think it would be up to the committee to look at that if we don't have somebody sitting. And we need another voting member. I think 3 would be a challenge. So we will be moving forward with what Mars recommended in the regional agreement.
Okay, Whitman School Building Committee.
Thank you. We heard it all.
Yep, and we have a meeting next week.
There's a meeting Tuesday. I am going to speak with Mr. Carroll first thing tomorrow. I don't know about putting anything on the agenda to change anything. We want to be careful with what we do with contingency and FF&E. if we don't spend it, we don't spend it. But if we take it away and then we find that we actually needed it, there could be, and it's not, and I hate to use this term because we're talking maybe a couple $1 million, but it's not project altering in how much it's going to cost in the overall big picture. So that's my initial thought. I do want to discuss it with him and, go from there. But I don't know that it needs to, be addressed on Tuesday or go backwards. We have an amount that we're sending forward that we voted.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Budget Subcommittee.
So, Chair isn't here, and I know Glenn, John, and myself were at the meeting, and I don't have my notes. I do take the notes of the secretary, but they're in
We can
the-
pass over till the next
They're
meeting.
in
I feel like John covered it all with capital and...
Yeah, we feel,
Okay.
yeah, thank you, John.
All right.
Thank you.
North River Collaborative.
No report.
South Shore Collaborative. Pilgrim.
We will be meeting the first Thursday in October, and things started out good. We will reorganize at that time as well as our regular agenda business.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
October 11th.
October 11th is the next meeting. Okay?
Our next meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
All in favor? Adjourning? Unanimous. Have a good rest of the night, guys.
Thank you. You too. Thanks, guys.